right to burn that flag in protest. Now show me that. Defend that. Celebrate that in your classrooms. Then you can stand up and sing about the land of the free. I've known Bob Rumson for years, and I've been operating under the assumption that the reason Bob devotes so much time and energy to shouting at the rain was that he simply didn't get it. Well, I was wrong. Bob's problem isn't that he doesn't get it. Bob's problem is that he can't sell it. We have serious problems to solve, and we need serious people to solve them. And whatever your particular problem is, I promise you, Bob Rumson is not the least bit interested in solving it. He is interested in two things, and two things only: making you afraid of it and telling you who's to blame for it. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how you win elections. America is advanced citizenship. You've got to want it bad, because it's going to put up a fight. It's going to say, you want free speech? Let's see you acknowledge a man whose words make your blood boil, who's standing center stage and advocating at the top of his lungs that which you would spend a lifetime opposing at the top of yours. You want to claim this land as the land of the free? Then the symbol of your country cannot just be a flag. The symbol also has to be one of its citizens exercising his right to burn that flag in protest. Now show me that. Defend that. Celebrate that in your classrooms. Then you can stand up and sing about the land of the free.
Welcome, everybody. Just getting started on the live. So just doing a small clip from the American president, the series.
Time and energy to shouting at the rain was that he simply didn't get it. Well, I was wrong. Bob's problem isn't that he doesn't get it. Bob's problem is that he can't sell it. We have serious problems.
That's what politics is about,
and we
selling.
Need serious people to solve them. And
welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining.
I promise you,
we're going to be talking about Venezuela, and I want to know what you guys think is going on there. Oh, welcome, everybody, on IG. Awesome to see the IGers here. That account is growing really nicely. And let me turn this down. All right, so those of you that are on IG, you can't see any background other than the garage here. But those of you on TikTok, you can, of course, see the background, and we're talking about Venezuela and the real agenda behind what's happening in Venezuela. I'm going to take guests both from IG and from TT, so you can request up in a little while, but we're first going to talk about it and ask some questions as everybody's joining the live. We have a little bit of an audience growing on IG and, of course, on TikTok as well. And I want to know from people in the comments, leave in the comments, what, if you had the rank, the highest priorities, like what is this about? What is Venezuela truly about? Is it about oil? Is it about gold? Is it about Russia and China's influence? What is it? So let me know in the comments as everyone is joining. I want to know what people think, if most people have sort of gotten the memo yet to see what this is truly about. Is it about D-rugs, or is it about something else? Is it ultimately, like, if you think it's multiple things, put it in the comments, rank 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I want to see if anyone has seen some of the good reporting that's been happening by UNFTR and by Mr. Global on TikTok, because they have a lot to say about what's happening with the oil industry and what's happening in the true plan on why this is happening in Venezuela and what is the link. So I think it's influence in oil going to China. Okay, Mrs. Z, that's the first one up, the first comment. See if there's anyone on IG that has any thoughts. What is this about in Venezuela? Because I think I'm going to blow some people's minds that haven't seen some of the reporting yet. I'm going to give you a hint. It's personal. If you want to think back to George W. Bush going into Iraq, that was also personal, right? There was a lot of personal reasons to do that. So that's the hint. It's also personal, but personal to who is the question? Like, who is the mastermind of what's happening in Venezuela? Maybe we'll start there. Who do you think is the mastermind of what's happening in Venezuela? Let's see who gets it in the comments. Who is the mastermind of what's happening in Venezuela? And then I'm going to go through and discuss. Those of you on TT, you can see the background. Those of you on IG, you can't. Those of you on, well, blowing my mind here, on on YouTube, you'll be able to see something different. You're just seeing, of course, my entire view. But those of you that are on TT, you might have a little bit of a head start since I'm able to place backgrounds. So it's about Machado and Nobel Peace Prize. Merv, that's a good guess. I think Stephen Miller and Peter Thiel are doing this. The TikTok kitty bear, that's some username, TikTok kitty bear. I think Stephen Miller and Peter Thiel are doing this. Maybe. So I see also on IG we got, Annie, I think you got it. And then there's Stephen Miller. I'm not going to say the name yet for the Annie put up. Scott Volick thinks it's about rare earth minerals. Vulcan Mining LLC 680 from taxpayers to Don Jr. Interesting. That might be a play. There's just not one reason. There's going to be a whole host of reasons. So we got the Koch brothers, I think, with a K instead of a C, Teal. It's all about the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar does have a play in here in the petrodollar. That is going to be true for sure. But as we get a lot of people now in here, I think I'm going to go and talk about the story, and then we're going to do a panel from both on IG and on TikTok and see who wants to talk about these things. Because I think, like I said, I think I'm going to blow some minds. This is not all my reporting. This is research that from Mr. Global's talked about it. This is research from Unfuck the Republic, UNFTR. Great YouTube channel. The guy who does that channel is incredibly well-spoken, really knowledgeable. So I'd recommend people to subscribe to that channel on YT if you want to understand what's happening here, because he does a great job of breaking it down. But nothing is known 100%, right? So there's going to be some speculation here. But the story is going to have a lot of validity and a lot of merit. So I hope people, I also did a video on this and I just posted it on both IG and TT about a half an hour ago. So when you get a chance, when you're done with this live, if you could please repost this video, because it's really fucking important that people understand what's happening. Like, we've been sold a bill of goods, like has happened before in the United States. We've been lied to directly, right? We know this is not about oil. So not about oil. So we know this is not about D-rugs. It's clearly not about D-rugs, and it's about everything else other than D-rugs. So let's start going through it and make some heads and tails of what's happening. So we got a nice big audience on TT now. So let's start the story. This is the real or likely agenda behind what's happening in Venezuela. So when I say the real agenda or the likely agenda, just know that things are subject to change, of course. As we learn more, we're going to learn what the agenda is. But this is certainly, in my mind, going to play a big part of it. And it has to do with one of the individuals that I think Annie on IG first, Rubio. Okay, there we go. Annie Kate. So Annie Kate, you got your shit together. You know what's going on, sort of. The full picture, I don't think any of us really understand. But that's what we're going to explain right now. So, Kevin, I don't make things up. I do my research. There is always a little bit of speculation because unless you hear it from the horse's mouth, you don't know exactly what's happening, but you can connect the dots. So I'm not making it up. There is a lot of reporting starting to happen around this subject. So for those, everyone knows it's not about D-rugs. So let's get going with the story. This is not about D-rugs. And of course, like me, most people also thought it had to do with oil. And oil plays a part. But the main reason everybody thought was this about the oil industries that have contributed enormous amounts of money to both Marco Rubio and Trump through their politics and through their campaigns, historically speaking. So Chevron, Exxon, Valero, Marathon, they've all been major contributors to both Rubio and to Trump in the past. So that leads us to think, like I thought as well, that this is primarily about oil. And then it was also about other things. But it's not primarily about oil, it seems. It's one of the, and here's why it's not about oil. Because the oil companies, the major U.S. oil companies, have invested $500 billion into the Canadian oil projects, into the Canadian oil fields. When they lost Venezuela, when Chavez kicked them out in 2000, they needed to look for other heavy crude, oil. Now, the places that that have heavy crude are, of course, Venezuela has a very sludge-like crude oil. The Gulf of Mexico, also, we have quite a bit of it as well. And now there's also Canada. So when the oil companies got pushed out of Venezuela back in the early 2000s by Chavez, they ended up looking to other sources of where they can get that oil, and they found large oil deposits in Canada with a very similar type of oil. Very heavy crude, the thick, sludgy stuff that only certain refineries are built to process. It takes, you can't refine every type of oil in one particular refinery. You have to build the refineries around the type of oil that you're trying to refine. And thick, heavy crude is very hard to refine. So they invested $500 billion, $500 billion in these Canadian oil fields. Now, you can look at the evidence are we having enough heavy crude to mix in with the light sweet crude oils? Because that's what you often do, depending on what type of things you're trying to refine, what type of gasoline products and so forth, jet fuel, etc. You merge these different types of oils, and that's how you'll get to different various forms of the final product. But anyway, so the investment was made in Canada. Now, we have refineries near the Great Lakes areas that can process and refine heavy crude. And we also have refineries on the Gulf Coast that were basically built to refine that oil out of the Gulf and from Venezuela. But in the past, those refineries weren't very busy. Now, what's happened is over the last many years, since the Canadian oil was discovered and that we're refining oil out of Canada, those refineries are operating almost at their limit, about 90+%. So they have more than enough heavy crude to process than they can handle. They don't need any more heavy crude. Now, everyone who thinks about oil and going to Venezuela is that these oil companies might want to go to Venezuela and extract the oil out of the ground or out of the ocean in Venezuela. They don't need to anymore. In fact, it's going to take tens of billions of dollars in reinvestment in those platforms and in those projects to extract the oil out of Venezuela. But if they make the investment, first off, they're pissing that investment away because they don't need to make that investment because they don't need any more of that oil right now. And they won't need it for a very long time. So you'd never make that investment. So then it means if you did make that investment and then you did produce and took the oil out of the ground in Venezuela, you'd have an excess of oil. That would lower the oil price for that particular heavy crude, and that would take away profits from the oil companies. They're not idiots. They're not going to do that. They're not going to cannibalize their own oil prices by having too much of a particular oil. So that's what never made sense about the oil story, is because we knew the refineries were processing more than enough heavy crude. So it's not about the oil companies. Now, what you won't hear the oil companies do, because they will not say anything negative about the Trump administration. So when Trump says our oil companies are going to go in there and make everybody lots of money, they're not going to do it. They're going to say they're going to do it, but they actually will not do it because it takes an enormous amount of money, like I said, to invest in those platforms to bring them back. Venezuela used to produce 3.5 million barrels a day of heavy crude. That number is down to about 800 to 900,000 barrels a day. Many of those barrels go to different Russia, Canada, Cuba, so forth. And a lot of it goes back to pay debts. So they're not even making much money on it because they have to pay back the debts back to these different countries, excluding Cuba. So that's what they're having to do here. So this is not about oil. It just never made complete sense. The administration is going in claiming that it was about derugs, but of course, once it happened, now they talked about extracting their minerals. So we know it's not about that. Now let's go to the second thing. There is a lot of gold supposedly in Venezuela. So there might be about gold and other resources in Venezuela that could be licensed out to U.S. corporations. That's possible. There's also a narrative about, thanks TikTok Kitty Bear. There's also a narrative, and thanks for all the comments, everybody. If you can ask questions, and this will get on the For Your page, the more people that ask questions and keep the activity going in the chat, the more likely we're getting more and more people in here, and we'll have a more lively discussion once guests start to jump in. So going back to the minerals, of course, there's some minerals. Now, there's also, of course, Russia and China have been getting some of the oil that's coming out of the ground that's being shipped to China, where they can also refine this oil. So there is a narrative that's also true that we don't want the influence of Russia and China in the Americas. That is a narrative that has been since the Americas Monroe Doctrine was created, that we've never wanted to have too much influence. And it was supposedly there were going to be some military bases for China and Russia placed in Venezuela. So that is also sort of a bonus that if the administration took Venezuela and they install a friendly government, a friendly, non-anti-American government, that would be generally good because it would push out Russia and Venezuela from our hemisphere. But by the way, just so everybody knows, I'm not a defender of the United States breaking the law and taking Maduro, who was a piece of shit, criminal, lost a fair election, and didn't relinquish power. No doubt about it. But the United States went in and decapitated, obviously, the head of state, captured the head of state, under no legal pretense whatsoever. So it's illegal. I am absolutely not for what happened to Maduro, even though who could give a shit about this guy. There needs to be free and fair elections in Venezuela, and there needs to be, like there was, but that's beside the point. You can disagree with both things and still be right. And that's what happened here. So then what is this all about? So we ruled out the primary reason that this is about oil. We ruled out, or at least I did, you guys may not agree with me, but we ruled out it's not about oil. We ruled out it's not primarily about Russia and China's influence. And we ruled out that it's not 100% about minerals. So then what is it about? All right, now here's where it gets interesting. You have to think, you've never heard anything about Venezuela over the past 20 years, hardly anything by any administration. And then all of a sudden, over the past 6 or 8 months, this thing, last 4 or 5 months, about Venezuela comes up. And this is not in the news cycle. It's not anyone's, forefront of mind. They're not thinking about Venezuela. Trump never mentioned really Venezuela on the campaign trail. This is not something that Trump was seeking to do. So you have to wonder who is doing it. Was it the U.S. oil companies that were pushing Trump to do it? We've ruled that out. Now, the think tanks from the oil companies have talked about regime change in Venezuela in the past. They sort of a bonus to have access to Venezuela oil if they need to is sort of a bonus. But again, it costs so much money to bring back online from 900,000 barrels a day to 3.5 million barrels a day. This is something that takes years and years to do. Okay, so we know Maduro was a bad guy and he's not there. So who is the mastermind of this? And it's widely reported, and I've been reporting it for a long time now, that it's Marco Rubio. The Secretary of State, the individual that's responsible for crafting our foreign policies, is the Secretary of State, and that's Marco Rubio. And if you've noticed, every time Venezuela comes up, Marco Rubio is right there, just like he was in the press conference a few days ago. So you can't imagine him crafting anything, Marco Rubio. All right, well, Marco's not doing it by himself, no doubt. But or maybe he is. This might be the area where Marco has a lot of expertise. So here's the primary, what do we want to call it? The primary likely agenda behind what's happening in Venezuela. Those of you on TikTok can see right behind my head, you have the orange country of Venezuela and you have the green country of Cuba. Well, where is Marco Rubio's family from? They're Cuban Americans. His parents emigrated from Cuba to the United States in 1956, just a year or two before Fidel Castro took over Cuba. So Rubio is a Cuban American politician. And now I'm going to wait just because you said that, good citizens. So you don't have to be here, but I appreciate you that you are here and listen to the full thing. So He's a Cuban-American politician. He has deep roots in Cuba. He's been very vocal throughout his political career about supporting regime change in Cuba, not Venezuela, because he's Cuban-American. His family wanted to return to Cuba back when Fidel Castro and the communist government took over Cuba. But they felt like they were exiled, like many Cuban Americans who left Cuba and came to the United States. They felt exiled from Cuba. They didn't necessarily want to leave Cuba. And we have our first request and guest. I'll start that soon. So there is a clear connection between Marco Rubio and Cuba. But what does Cuba have to do with Venezuela? That's the question, right? Well, Cuba and Venezuela form the basis. They have the most important strategic, economic, and political relationship in Latin America that is anti-American. You have Cuba, which is a communist country, and you have Venezuela as a socialist country. They have deep economic ties and trading ties between one another. And in these two facts, Venezuela ships and provides Cuba with a lot of its oil. And if you know anything about Cuba, Cuba hasn't been having a lot of energy concerns over the past many years because they're having trouble getting enough oil because Venezuela production has been coming down. But the agreement between Cuba and the trade agreement between Cuba and Venezuela is we will send you oil, and in return, you will send us expertise, healthcare workers, teachers, technologists, other aspects, because most people don't realize that Cuba had a very strong, thriving healthcare industry, and they needed healthcare experts to come to Cuba. So Cuba provides tens of thousands of Cubans that live in Venezuela, and they provide services for the government, and that's the trade. Cuba gets very, very cheap oil that's highly subsidized by Venezuela. You don't have to take my word for it. You can look this up. And in return, Venezuela gets expertise from Cuba. That's the relationship. Both of these countries are anti-America and anti-democratic. So what Rubio is looking to do is to get a 2-for-1 special. And he wants, by decapitating or taking Maduro out of Venezuela and installing a friendly pro-American government, if they can do that, that's a big if, and preventing oil from going from Venezuela to Cuba, they can choke off Cuba's energy needs. Now, if you listen in the press conference, they also talked about Cuba and they also talked about Mexico. Why would they talk about Mexico? Because Mexico is also a provider of oil to Cuba. Cuba does have a refinery that refines Venezuela's deep, heavy crude oil. Now, they've been struggling to get enough of this, and it puts pressure, of course, on the Cuban Communist Party. So this seems like what's happening here is the strategy is for Rubio to choke out Cuba by preventing oil from getting to Cuba, both from Venezuela, and if we see something happening from Mexico where the United States strikes a deal, it might be done in secret, where they prevent Mexico from shipping oil to Cuba. Because it's not only Marco Rubio's desires and agenda. A large part of the most influential Cuban-American community, Burakin, you're going to come up in just a moment, they also want to have regime change in Cuba because a lot of Cuban-Americans want to see Cuba thrive again, and they want to return and be able to return to Cuba to go see their loved ones and go see their families. So Rubio, being from Florida, of course, close to Cuba, and the Cuban-American community have been wanting to see regime change in Cuba. So if you remove Maduro and install a friendly government in Venezuela and you prevent the oil, you take over the oil from reaching Cuba, then you can start putting a stranglehold on Cuba's energy needs. Now, what else will they do to put more pressure on Cuba? That's hard to know for sure. I don't know if any of us know that yet. Maybe some of our guests do, and you're going to come up in just a moment. So that's the real story here, is that this strategy is mostly about getting a 2-for-1 special, putting in a new government in Venezuela, having control of the oil, and preventing Cuba from getting oil, and then eventually overthrowing the Cuban government. This is a chance of a lifetime for Marco Rubio to have tremendous influence in taking over Cuba, or being the guy that was responsible for overthrowing the Cuban government. Now you have to ask, does Marco Rubio, and I just have to wonder, does he have aspirations about returning to Cuba and possibly restoring Cuba as a great nation? Does he possibly want to do that? Is that his plan? I don't know. I think that's a theory that you might think about. But this is what's mostly going to transpire, is that this is about Cuba first, not Venezuela first. And Venezuela is a bonus by being able to eradicate the influence of Russia and China, getting access to all the resources and whatever else comes with it. Now, it's a very risky strategy. It comes with a lot of potential problems in the future, but that's the strategy that looks to be so forth. So now I'm going to bring up some guests. We have a couple of guests that are waiting, Alex Seven and Burakin. I'm going to bring you both up, and I'm going to answer some questions in the comments. In the meantime, let me change the format here.
How's it going, DK?
What's up, man? Who do we got here? Is that Alex or Burakin?
That's Burakin.
Oh, Burakin. Okay. What's up, Burakin? How are you? All right. So what do you think about
I'm very well. How are you?
Good. What do you think of the theory?
Yeah. Are you familiar with the U.S. Blockade on Cuba that's been enacted on the Cuban people for the last 60 years?
Yes.
Do you think that it's inhumane?
All right. Where are you going with this?
I'm asking you.
Do I think?
Do you think it's inhumane? I'm not going anywhere. I'm asking you if you know.
It depends.
I met a lot of people who have defended Marco Rubio's policies and Marco Rubio's, I guess, geopolitical ideology, who have claimed that Cuba is somehow this like ontological threat to American imperialism, which is probably true. You know,
it's not true.
You know, it's a valid claim. But what's being done to the Cuban people, I would define as an ongoing humanitarian crisis, and the UN has been running cover for that humanitarian crisis for the last 65 years. And I think that it's important for anyone who's going to discuss the nature of what's happening to the Cuban people, for them to acknowledge that what's happening to them is in fact a blockade.
Yeah,
it's not sanctions. It's not sanctions. It's not cutting off of resources. It's a full blown blockade, and I think that any that takes it upon themselves to try to help these people are doing God's work.
Okay, we lost you there for a moment. You dropped out.
I know. I got a phone call.
Okay. Yeah. So listen, I'm not in agreement about, I want Cuba to be, Cuba was once a great nation, was where everyone went to in the 20s and the 30s to hang out. A lot of celebrities went there. It has a very strong past, but of course
a tourist destination 100 years ago. Yeah. When a bunch of gusanos owned sugar plantations and had slaves there. Yeah, the Cuban people didn't really like that very much. If you know anything about Cuban history, you wouldn't be saying that so frivolously.
Who said I'm saying it frivolously? What gives you that thing that I'm saying frivolously? It was once
You're talking about Cuban history 100 years ago.
I'm saying it was a prosperous place. Yes, 100 years ago, it was a very prosperous place. It was a destination. Now, I'm not saying, obviously, there were tremendous influences between Cuba. There was a colonial, like Venezuela was a colonial empire of surrogate of Cuba.
Venezuela was a colonial surrogate of Cuba?
Yes. All right, but get to your point. So what else do you want to think? So you're saying there's been a blockade, it's a humanitarian crisis in Cuba. Okay, we agree with that. Anything else?
Cuba was a surrogate empire of Venezuela?
That point. The UK for a long time, and then wasn't it? I'd have to go back in details. But anyway, we'll do more.
You're just throwing words. We're just throwing words around now.
Well,
All right.
Brocken, I got a
You
question
made
for you,
your whole.
Brocken.
Yeah, sure. Hit me, Alex.
So I got a question for you. So I understand what you're saying. There's have been negative things that have happened to most nations on Earth, if not within
No,
most
I'm
nations.
talking about.
Hang on, brother. Let me at least get the fucking question out, if you don't mind. So what I was gonna say is like there has been things that have transpired that people can point to and say this is unjust. I understand your point, and I understand that you're saying that you have a problem with it. What do you like? What do you feel like? Why don't you feel like now would be a better time to have kind of a realignment with the nation like Cuba or Venezuela?
I
And why do
think.
you keep tying? Hang on. Let me get the question now, brother.
Sure.
Why do you keep tying the nation as it stands now back to the historical events that have transpired? Because you are stuck in a time frame of, oh my God, bad things have happened here. You probably don't trust what the ideas of people moving forward, but this is a whole new entire world. At that time, China was a non-capitalistic community that did not trade with the world, and look at them now. They're able to create products that you use and they benefit from it. They have a 1.2 trillion dollar surplus in trade on an annual basis. The point that I'm trying to get to, and I got a question for you, is why do you believe that 100 years ago has anything to do with now?
Well, that's what the host brought up.
No, you
I think a
brought it up.
blockade.
You brought up the
I didn't bring
historical.
up. I didn't bring up 100 years ago when.
So again, can
Sorry,
you answer the
sorry,
question?
sorry, sorry,
Why are you
sorry.
tying it
I'm so
to?
sorry. I'm so sorry. I gotta go, guys. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, he can't answer the question. That's
No,
why.
I have a family thing to deal with.
Yeah, sure thing. Dickhead.
All right, Alex, well said. Yeah, and I did misspeak about, obviously, Venezuela was never a colony of Venezuela. Cuba has always had a lot of influence with Venezuela, but it was never a colony of any kind.
Well, I'm all for the changes that are happening. We're trying to pretend like there is this new world where everything is done by the book, like international law actually exists when it doesn't. China does what they want in Tibet, in the northwest, parts of the country with you know, uh, indoctrination camps. Like there is no international law. If we're trying to play by international law when the rest of the world is not, we will literally cease to exist. Let's stop pretending. Let's stop trying to be politically correct. People are got their heads so far in the sand to believe that any of this stuff actually exists when everybody's playing by their own rules within their region.
All right, let me push back on that. So I understand your point of view. I think you're dead wrong because it doesn't matter. Yes, you're right about influence. This is how the difference is a very binary relationship between a rules-based world order and a democratic world order and an authoritarian-based world order. If democracy and a rules-based world order is expanding, the rest of the autocracies and dictatorships are contracting. And the opposite happens. So after World War II, when we established a world order, that it allowed countries to thrive, and of course NATO was formed and others, and they started to create this rules-based world order. It is our responsibility, the United States, as the creator with our allies of that rules-based order, to have a value system and have international laws. And I'm not suggesting that the United States has always followed international law, not by a long shot. That's besides the point. The objective is if you're going to be a rules-based world order in a country that promotes that, you have to stand on morals and on values, and in our case, American values. And again, I'm not saying that we've always done that. But if you're going to pretend and act like it no longer matters and we shouldn't give a shit about it anymore, the only thing that's going to happen is a faster decline of of China taking over Taiwan and Russia going out to take the former Soviet states. It is geopolitically a foolish mindset to have because it will end up leading to anarchy throughout the world. So that's my pushback.
So-
you can't just say we should ignore it. We're the ones that created the system and we should be controlling that system and trying to promote it.
But Exactly. So we are losing control of that system when we allow ourselves to be so politically correct within our
This has nothing
hemisphere.
to do about
Now,
politically correctness. This has to do with,
absolutely, it has to do with
no, it has to
politically
do with
correct.
following the laws. There is a different way. How you do things matters. It's not just what, if you think you did the right thing, like pulling Maduro out, and you could say that's a lot of people and Venezuelans right now are happy about that at the moment. So you can say, well, the right thing happened, but how you do it matters. Because if you don't do it the right way and you do it illegally by attacking a head of state against the Constitution, against international law, you've given a license to any country to go in and decapitate a head of state from any other country. That is what the United States is not supposed to do. We're not an imperial empire. And if we start acting like one again, then there's no more rules. And then the world will devolve into anarchy.
And may I jump in?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Thanks for letting me jump in. I think anytime you go against the laws, you become lawless. And when there's lawlessness across the world, now it's whoever has the biggest army wins. And that is setting the world up for war.
That's right. Always ends
And
in war. Absolutely.
what has kept the world somewhat sane is that since World War II, yes, there's been wars, but we didn't have world wars. We're setting ourselves up for a world war now. And that's just the truth of the matter because of the lawlessness. The UN says, the United Nations says you cannot go in a sovereign country and take a president of that country.
He's
Doesn't
not
that
the
just make
president.
sense?
He's not the president. 64 countries in the world agree that he's not the president. He is not
It
the
doesn't
president.
matter what they agree. He's the president.
He's the head of state.
The majority of the United Nations states agree that he is not the president. He's not the president.
No, that
And
doesn't matter what
majority of
they
them,
say. It's
not
the
ma-
So
reality
you're
is,
saying that it doesn't. So hang on, if I may.
yeah.
You guys are saying that what the UN says matters, but at the same time that the UN says that he's not the president,
the
that
UN
does
didn't say
not
he wasn't the
matter. You
president.
are not being you
Certain
are not being
countries,
consistent.
certain countries in the UN said he wasn't the president. The UN didn't say he wasn't the president. Certain countries in the UN said he wasn't the president. They didn't unanimously say he wasn't the president. So you're not speaking truth.
I am speaking the truth.
There's a
Any
there's a
all the countries that matter that
no no
are
no.
actually
All countries
G15
matter. See what you
countries,
just said? All the
G20
countries.
countries,
You said all the countries that matter.
exactly.
What do you mean that matter? The
You heard what I
European
said.
countries? Are you saying the European countries?
Nope, I didn't say that. I said G20. So you have Asian countries included.
Like which ones?
Asian, so G20 is not just European countries. Do you not know that Brazil is a G20
No, but he's
country?
asking which ones don't recognize.
Japan.
Yeah.
Let me pull up the list. I'll have to pull up the list.
With the list.
All right, but we're going down God's work. I appreciate your perspective. It's great perspective. I'm just going to bring it back a little bit more high level. Is it legal?
Uh-huh.
Is it legal from the constitutional standpoint, what he did?
No, it's illegal.
Yeah, I can explain how it is in a
Illegal.
second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
It's totally illegal. You are not allowed to go into someone's country. The Congress didn't say we're at war with this country.
That's right. In Article 1, declaring war and doing something about a head of state is the responsibility of Article 1 in the Constitution, which is the Congress.
So let me ask you, let me pose this question. Let's say Russia knows where Zelensky's at and they just go get him now when he's flying around the world. How easy would that be for them to do?
Well, not for Russia. It's not that easy because they've been trying to do it and they're incompetent. So, but your point is well taken. But that's the point. So we're supposed to be a rules. We have a law of the land is the Constitution. The Constitution gives the right to Congress to do this. It's illegal for the president and the executive branch to do this. And some people, again, might say, oh, the outcome seems positive at the moment. But that's not how we operate. We operate on a rules-based system with a constitutional law of order. And when we decide, because it's in our benefit, which again, we've done in the past many times, but it doesn't make it right. It doesn't ever make it right. And all we do is allow other governments to then say, fuck the rules-based world order. They don't listen to it, so we don't listen to it.
Well, here's the true problem. One day America won't be the biggest army in the world. China is building warships 8 to our 1. So one day we won't have the most aircraft carriers. We won't have the most warships. So then what? When there's no law to abide by.
Right.
And I was telling someone, go on.
That's true regardless. That's true regardless of the past 5 days, brother.
No, and
that does not exist. Hang on.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're making it seem like as if it's a consequence to Maduro, as if China did not have the largest military, the largest navy prior to 5 days ago. That has nothing to do with it. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. They've been growing and developing their military. This is not a consequence to Maduro. That's what I said. Your head is in the sand. You believe in this utopian society that exists, and it's really about utopian. Power and influence.
Utopian? You're going to use the word utopian society? That's what we're seeking here? Come on.
This utopian world where there is no conflict, it just does not exist. Right, you don't understand human nature.
You want to live in a world of chaos. Is that where you want to be?
No, I understand. No, what I understand is that there is at times where chaos is necessary. And this is not chaos. Arresting one man is not chaos.
Oh, you don't understand.
Going in and taking the oil is.
That's also not chaos, because it's not like we're going to extract all of the oil out of Venezuela, and there will be no benefit to Venezuela.
It's Venezuela's oil. It's not America's oil.
So again, if you help someone gain prosperity, and in that process you receive a percentage, that is just the way that the world works. So now you're trying to say that the United States should not have any type of benefit in terms of oil. We honestly don't even need the oil. But to your point, if you're saying that benefiting from oil from foreign governments is bad, China and Russia are buying Venezuela oil, circumventing the petrodollar per se.
Who cares? This isn't America's world.
It absolutely is. If we created this new world order, this new world system that people are not participating in, then why do we care? So you're contradicting yourself, saying that this is not America's world. No, what we said is let's lay some ground rules that we could all abide by, and now you're saying that we shouldn't abide by it. And we're saying that
America made that rule. You gotta buy oil in my dollar.
TK, can you explain to him what I just said? Because he's emotionally.
I'm going to split the difference between you guys. Here's where I think you're both wrong. The United States, as the most powerful nation in the world and the richest nation in the world, and one that has created the current world order with our allies. With great power comes great responsibility. We are, whether we like it or not, the world's policeman. And people think that is a detriment, and that's a problem. It is not. It's a responsibility, and it's a privilege. And I'm not suggesting we should ever over-police. But like God's work, you're suggesting that this is not an American-led world. It is. The reality of it is, and it has been.
Well, what I'm saying now is,
let me finish.
Okay.
Let me just finish. And then, so we are in that role. It should be a privilege and responsibility to all Americans. But with that comes great responsibility. And we should not be overstepping the bounds of outside of our own rules and our own laws, because that leads to chaos. And by the way, I'm not too worried about China is, yes, producing ships 8-1, yada, yada. We're still in a position of the world where it's will never be attacked by conventional means. And we have, China's surrounded by enemies everywhere. They also have a declining population. So yes, China seems like it's rising, but ultimately China is not going to be the next United States of America. If it is, the entire world has gone to hell because it is not a rules-based order. So people need to think clearly about the America's responsibility in the world and its credibility to do things the right way. So that's my point. And we have a couple
Let me ask you all a question.
So okay, so then when China is circumventing this world order that we're all supposed to be abiding by, and we just sit by, stand idle, and do anything back, this diminishes the same way that you're saying that we are diminishing that world order or that new rules-based order that we should all be gentlemanly and work by pen only. When they're building the world's largest navy, what do you think that's for? What do you think that's actually for?
Of course, we know what it's for.
Can I ask you all a question?
Yeah.
In the last 20 years, who did China bomb?
So again, you're trying to pretend.
I'm asking you a question. In the last 20 years, who did China bomb?
God's work. They haven't attacked anyone, but that doesn't mean they don't want to. They are clearly positioning themselves. They are saying they're going to take back Taiwan by force. And you always have to trust a dictator. When they tell you they're going to do something, they're going to do it.
They didn't say they're going to take it back by force.
Yes,
but
here's
the question.
They said whether it's peaceful or by force, they will take Taiwan.
China's influence around the world has nothing to do with their army. It has to do with their investment and how they operate business. The only reason why America
that's actually false.
is doing anything around this world is because of their army.
Well, that's true. They have attacked. They have suppressed Tibetans and Mongolians and others, right? And
Tibet, Mongolia, all of these countries surrounding.
They're encroaching on India,
China. Like you're trying to pretend like if they're not some expansionist government and they're just like just like the UAE or something like or Singaporeans like where they're just like to themselves trying to create business environments. Absolutely not. They're expansionist communists that want more power and control and influence in the world. They do it through money, yes, but it's not that it's not happening. You're just trying to use the fact that yes, we have used military force.
That's it, military force.
Okay. Well, yeah, they're also not coming to the aid. They're also not. When's the last time that China had their, two of their towers, dropped
not go down that rabbit hole.
Okay. So then, when is the last time?
Guys,
let's not go down that rabbit hole. It's
really simple. Do you want freedom and liberty? Do we promote freedom and liberty throughout the world? Is that what we're supposed to be doing with our American values, or not? When you have a dictatorship and you have these governments that are autocracies, or in case of China, a communist political party, they're not going to operate on a human rights basis with freedom and liberties. They operate differently. This is what the world order is.
Would you say we in America have freedom and liberty?
Absolutely.
It depends on how you classify it. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. We're losing our freedoms and liberties. There's
Watch this. America is $36 trillion in debt.
What's your point?
The rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer.
I'm not going to argue with that.
And they just cut the medical subsidies where people's monthly payments are tripling.
That's false.
That's not.
That isn't false.
It's true. All right, guys. Anyway, we can go on this all night. I have a couple other guests here that I want to talk to. So we got River here,
right.
And so thanks for joining. I appreciate everybody's perspective. I'm sorry, Alex, you don't see it the same way, but if you want to lead to chaos and you don't believe in American values.
No, I'm just a realist. I'm a realist, and I understand that.
No, you're
If
not a
you're getting
realist.
punched
You're
in
a
the
realist.
mouth,
You're a realist in what you've seen so far to date, which I have a suspicion that you're about Gen Z or Gen Z or a young millennial.
no, I've studied history.
Okay, good.
I've studied. I know geopolitics all the way back to like prior to the Dutch Empire, English Empire. I've seen this play out. World War One, World War Two. I understand how it all started, why it ended, how we got to these places. I'm not just some young guy who's just up here talking.
Okay. No, and I'm not, and
Um,
I'm accusing you can't be very knowledgeable as a young person. However, with that said, you, as a younger guy, you have not witnessed post World War II order at its best in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, where we were moving in a direction that we could still move to if we held to our values with our allies. We could continue to pursue a realism world where there is less human suffering and there is less empires and less nefarious forces. So you think as a realist that it can't happen, that you're always going to have dictators and authoritarians and you're always going to have chaos eventually. It doesn't have to be like that. We actually get to determine, the United States, its population and its allies determine whether the world continues now to head towards a place where there's going to be more chaos and more war, or we decide that we want to institute to prevent China from expanding and other authoritarians for doing things that
but
are outside of having freedoms and liberties. Thank you for
so
joining
then,
in.
why are you pretending that it doesn't take war and conflict to accomplish what we had?
I'm not,
So the
oh,
Great
I'm not
Peace.
naive like that.
So
Of course it does at times.
So then why are you saying that we're like that's what it takes
No,
sometimes.
it
That's
takes,
absolutely what it
you run
takes.
by values. You have a value system, and only if at last resort you can't abide by those values because you're literally being attacked for some reason, then that's what you have to do. We're supposed to. Then you have
We
to,
are being attacked.
in a cold sense at the moment. But anyway, thanks for joining. I'm going to have Reaver come up and ever snow whatever. Thanks, Alex.
All right, guys. I'm a bit confused. I can't quite work out if you, the host, and are
Hello.
like, impressed by Trump and what he's done, or if you're like if you think it's the right thing or not. Which side of the fence are you on here?
Oh, I'm on the wrong side. It's absolutely, he did not do what's legally
All right,
permissible. He shouldn't have done what he did.
right, yeah, because you were just now talking about standing on your principles, but about 10 minutes
I
ago you were
mean,
talking about
as a
um,
Venezuelan,
Okay, that's
that I,
great. Just hold on 1 second. That's awesome. I'm glad that you're here. Let me let River just finish up, and then I want to hear from you for sure.
yeah, and just
I'm
ten
sorry,
minutes
I cannot
ago
hear him. That's why. Sorry.
Oh,
10 minutes ago you were talking about how America is the world's police, and as if it's your responsibility to police the world and stuff, and the two seem to clash. So I was a bit puzzled.
all right.
One thing I'd like, I'll just make a single point and then let the lady at the bottom speak, because it'd be good to hear from someone from Venezuela.
Yeah.
We're out now of this partnership with America, the UK. We already were pretty much out because of all the chaos with Trump this past year and pulling out of the deals with Ukraine and stuff. And militarily, we're leaving all partnerships with America, and this has just sped that up. So we won't be producing, we won't be developing any new military technology with you guys. We won't be sharing the lessons learned from Ukraine with you guys. We won't be sharing our laser technology as we're fine tuning them so that we can take out, missile systems in Ukraine. Like our systems are there right now being live tested. We won't be sharing that technology with you guys. Instead, we're looking to partnership up with the Northern European countries. Like we're replacing your AWACS systems with the Saab systems right now, and we're using them, piggybacking them with old F-16s and new technology upgrades instead of using your AWACS, because we just cannot trust America anymore. And even after Trump, even if you go and you elect a very sensible, middle of the ground politician after Trump, because there's the potential for America to lose its mind and vote for another Trump, we will never allow ourselves to be dependent upon America as part of our supply chain for military security ever again. So
Right. What happened in
that's
the
the
Oval
reality.
Office with Zelensky changed the calculus for every European leader and even other foreign governments
Yeah,
to say that, and like you said, this is not that one speech. People say that's just words. It's not going to have an impact. That's going to have an impact for many, many decades. And that's why the European military industrial complex is now ramping up again. Something that was in our promise to always protect Europe and keep us peaceful, but we broke that promise now, and that's going to move us down a rabbit's hole where you guys all have to protect yourselves or worry about protecting
yeah.
yourselves.
But like because America's always had its private military sector, private arms sector as well. We're just going to steal that. We're gonna develop our own stuff here, and any engineer who wants to be developing the best will be traveling to Europe and working for European private sector companies and feeding into the European supply chain.
Yep,
So
that might be possible.
you really have shot yourselves in the foot. We now need, and I think every sensible person in Europe would agree, we need to have independence from America, and we need to have like no reliance on you in times of war, and that's been proven like without a doubt this last decade, and especially last
Yeah.
year or so since Trump.
Let me
took
give you my
over.
perspective on that, because I agree with it. That's going to happen. I think it's also dangerous, though. I think, well, if America continues to go on a path that it's going, then of course you need to continue. It's a sad state because it shouldn't be like that. It would be a better situation as it was previously. Now, I just want to answer your
Yeah, it
question
would.
from earlier about the world's policemen. It's really simple. The United States Navy has policed the world's oceans to ensure that trade can move freely, right, without pirates and
Yeah.
so forth. And that's the major part of being the world's policeman, is making sure trade can flow freely. It does not mean we have to insert ourselves into every domestic conflict in every other country, especially countries, even when there's human rights abuses. But we can't do that. That's not our role. That's not our responsibility.
Yeah.
So anyway, we definitely
I-
want to hear from Snowval from Venezuela.
Yeah. I'll give you a little book recommendation before we pass on, if I can. It's
Hi.
Yeah,
Material
I'm sorry.
World.
drop
What?
it into the comments.
Cool.
I didn't hear anything he said before. I don't understand why.
Interesting.
Um,
Did you hear the other guests?
I hear the guest before him. Yeah, I just didn't hear him.
Okay.
The river.
Okay. So you're from
Um,
Venezuela? Are you living in Venezuela now, or are you just from Venezuela?
I'm from Venezuela. I lived there for 18 years, and I moved here because I had to, because I run away from my house. I left my family, everyone I ever loved, my language, everything, so I can live instead of surviving.
And what do you think about what's happened in Venezuela? Are you happy?
Honestly, yeah. And that doesn't make me stupid, like a lot of other Americans and people who is not from Venezuela often says, like, "Oh, you're happy and you're celebrating because you don't understand." No, I do, and that doesn't make me naive either. I know I don't like Trump. Let's clarify that. I don't like Trump. I'm 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 not okay with a lot of the things he says and he does. But after 25 plus of a dictatorship, yes, I'm happy someone did something. Because we were asking for help, begging for international help for years. We did everything we could by ourselves. And who helped us? No one did.
Right. So now you have
No one
you
cared.
have some hope.
Exactly. I have hope, which is great, and which is something Venezuelans didn't have at all before.
The
I
problem
know
I have, the problem I
From now on,
sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I finish?
Yeah.
I know from now on, it may be worst for a little bit. I know it's not gonna be pretty. I know the possibility my mom die and my family die. It's big. I know that. Am I happy with that? No. But I can control the future. I don't think like any Venezuelan can control the future. Also, the way Trump did it, it's bad. Did all of that without asking the Congress, it's bad. And I understand why Americans don't like it. But then like with a minimum of compassion, you can understand why Venezuelans are happy now and why we like it. Also, just to clarify, Maduro wasn't a president, Maduro was a dictator. And as Venezuelans, we don't consider that a kidnapping, we consider that an arrest. And yeah, I'm
Yeah,
finished.
it's like you said. So both things can be true. The way that it was done,
Yeah.
and which is I preached before, how you do it matters. But now that it's done and it gives people hope, I can appreciate that, and I think that's great. I don't want to be cynical, but I think history has proven that the more likely outcome, not saying I hope this is wrong, but the more likely outcome, knowing how much corruption and how many mafia and gangs there are in Venezuela, which you know much better than I do, the likelihood of that turning into that cultural, turning into something positive is not assured by any means. It's more likely to lead to, you were probably, I don't know how old you are, if you remember, of course, when Venezuelans were starving for long periods of time.
Yeah.
So that might happen again. And that sucks.
Of course, the thing is like
there's never been
before we knew like it's gonna be like that forever and nothing's gonna change.
True.
Even when we're asking for help.
True.
Now it's
you need-
something is different.
Okay, River, you're up.
Snowball, I'm guessing that you're not in Venezuela because you were talking about your parents being at risk over there. And so this is the problem, right? A third of your country, yeah, and a military force many tens of times bigger than any military force that Maduro's could mass, ran away. There has never ever been democracy,
Self-rule.
dictatorship has never been overthrown and turned into democracy without the people themselves standing up and putting their lives on the line and taking it. You know, so the fact that you all ran away, that's the reason that you continue to suffer. Your country continued to suffer under Maduro's. Really, you all needed to get together and go back and take your country, but you failed. So that is your own shame and your shame to carry. And you're so naive if you think that you're now going to get democracy. You're not. You're going to get what Haiti got. Yeah? America's going to be interested in your country just as long as Trump's in charge. As soon as Trump's gone, yeah, the likes of Vance will probably run on an anti-Venezuela policy. So you'll have both sides of the house running on an anti-interventionist platform. So the second either the Democrats or the Republicans win the next election, that's it. It's over for Venezuela, and it'll just be an Afghanistan situation where they'll pull out any forces that they have there or any influence that they have there. The embassy will pack its bags, jump on a plane, and sod off, and then the gangs will fill the power vacuum instantly. So, you know, like you can, as a foreign entity, encourage an uprising among people and arm a legitimate democratic group of people to take over. I mean, if you think the history in Spain and the International Brigade being armed by all kinds of different entities and backed by all kinds of people from all over the world, a real volunteer military. They didn't win the war against Franco, but they almost did, and that's the only way that foreign entities can support such a thing.
That's like what's
And
happening.
no
That's what
single
happened in
nation-
Ukraine, right? Ukraine was the opportunity because they were moving towards the European Union. They wanted democracy, and they had the people were rising up, and that's where the Western worlds could support them But there's no guarantee
Yes.
that will work because, of course, you have other individuals, in this case Russia, that don't want it to happen. But those are the only rare situations where you have a popular movement from within that is moving in a direction. That's where any outside country can support it, but they can't change it.
Yeah. I mean, how did Britain get its democracy? How did America get its democracy? France get its democracy?
Sure, you fought
They
for it.
all got it by standing up against armed people. Several of, lots of them laying down their lives unarmed, but standing up in such a mass number that they could not be defeated. You work out how many Venezuelans have left Venezuela and compare that to how many bullets exist in Venezuela. And you'll find that there's probably 100, if not 1,000 men for every bullet. Never mind people to fire them. You know, we have a million strong marches on the left in the UK, quite regular now. The first one was the Iraq invasion protest, but in the modern era, it's much more regular.
Right.
And our total military and police force combined, I think it'll be about 420,000. Yeah, and there is not enough bullets to give each of those 3 rounds each.
Right.
Or
Let me go back.
firearms
Let me
set.
go back to Snow and see if she had. So those are some harsh thoughts for Snow. What are your thoughts? If you want to respond, then I'm going to bring a couple other guests into their thoughts. So obviously, the harsh reality is that might take place. What he's suggesting. How do you feel about that?
I will love to hear what he say, but I couldn't listen anything.
Oh, okay. Apologies.
Oh.
Okay, that's too bad. All right, River, for whatever reason, can anyone tell me in the comments, can everyone hear River, or is it just that Snow Venezuela cannot hear him? Can everyone else hear him? I'd assume so. Okay, Danny hears. Okay, great.
I don't know why. Like, I would love to hear him, but
And let me see if you can hear someone else.
It feels so conspiratorial.
Yeah, Humanity with Love. Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
I can hear him.
where? Okay, you can hear him. Where
Yeah.
is this all Irish and Brits? Where are you guys coming from? Humanity.
I'm from the north of England, yeah.
Oh, thanks for joining. I appreciate you. Okay, what are your thoughts? Humanity, do you have something you want to add? Okay, we're
Can
losing.
you hear me?
You're in and out, mostly out.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, basically, I think really you're missing the big picture, mainly the economic situation around the world at the moment. These economic forces now are putting pressure on certain countries, basically meaning that their GDPs have all dropped off to basically in the 0.5 to 0.7 range, which is dismal. I mean, there's no growth. And
Well,
these,
I don't mean
these
to
are
interrupt,
countries-
but we're primarily talking about the invasion with Venezuela and so forth and related topics.
Oh, there's a connection here. I know the connection he's going to make.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're in a worldwide recession now. This is basically, and these governments, the socialist, communist-backed countries, they've got no income. They're in dismal, in a state of dismal, income. So really, I think basically the situation that happened with Venezuela is that because of the Ukraine war, the Russians have been planning something in the BRICS system that they've got running.
Units.
And I think that basically it was really a national security issue where they were planning on maybe putting missiles in Venezuela and Cuba.
Right. They were considering making
somehow-
military bases in Venezuela. Right.
Well, as you would know, in Russia they have neocons like they do in America, like we have in Australia and in Britain and Europe. There are neocons on both sides. And they were already talking about in Russia putting missiles, their latest ones that they've got. I think there's a range of about 3,600 kilometres. So if they were to place them in those countries, they could target anywhere. Well, basically
But
at
the
the
United
United
States
States.
would never let that happen.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the situation you've got.
The United States military will never let that happen. And that could be a contributing factor to what happened here, right?
Well, they would not admit that in the mainstream media, of course, but using other, kind of things that they've found that they're doing, these regimes, obviously that is a factor you would be putting, at the top of the list. I mean, when they're talking about it in Russia, they're neocons that they're going to use these satellite countries that are taking money or supplying them with materials. You would have to have it at the top of the list, and there would be a countermeasure to take against that. So I think it's just a lot more than just oil, definitely.
Right. Okay, I brought Angel in. He said he's from Venezuela, so let's hear from a Venezuelan. Are you in Venezuela now, or are you former? Or not former, but out of the country?
Hello. Thank you for letting me in. I really appreciate that. Well, yeah, I'm from Venezuela, but I live in Canada right now. I live in Alberta. Well, a lot of people, during the last days were mentioning a lot of things about what's going on in Venezuela. But first of all, nobody understands how Venezuela feels about this, because more than 10 million Venezuelans left the country because we've been dealing with a regime that destroyed our lives completely. By the way, also, nobody are denying like the U.S. government is going for the oil in Venezuela. But you know what? Honestly, Venezuelans during more than 16 years didn't see any cent of that oil that were being produced. Also, in the country, we were invaded by Russia, China, and Iran, and we were sending free oil to Cuba. And nobody mentioned that when it comes to the US. Also, Chavez were in power in 1999. Before Chavez, during all those years, the first ally of Venezuela were United States. Venezuela were a normal country with all the problems, with the pros and cons. But everyone is forgetting Venezuela were one of the best countries economically in the region. Also, the nationalization of the oil in Venezuela were in the 70s, not when Chavez or Maduro were in power. Also, when Chavez entered the
Wait, hold on 1
government,
minute. Chavez nationalized the oil when he got into office in
no,
1999. What do you mean? No,
no,
he kicked out all
no,
the U.S. oil
no.
companies.
It was Carlos Andrés Pérez. It was Carlos Andrés Pérez, not Chavez. I think it was Carlos Andrés Pérez, if I'm not wrong, but it was in the 70s. It wasn't Chavez. Chavez just
But
rebrand
your oil is nationalized right now.
right now, but it's from the 70s, not from Chavez.
No, but also from the 2000s to right now. For the last 25 years, it's been...
No, of course. But what I'm trying to say, PDVSA or PDVSA for a very pronunciation in English, were before Chavez. Chavez didn't create PDVSA. So the thing is, in the 70s, the oil in Venezuela, I don't remember exactly the year. I'm really bad with dates, to be honest. Sorry for that. But you can investigate when the oil in Venezuela were nationalized, and it wasn't with Chavez, it was before. With Chavez, he just rebrand everything into the socialist way. Like he calls everything socialism, like the socialist oil, the socialist people, the socialist government, the socialist whatever. So the thing is, some Americans or liberal Americans are forgetting some stuff that are not mentioned when they defend Maduro. Second of all, Maduro wasn't a president. Maduro was a criminal who stole Venezuela. Also, it wasn't an invasion. An invasion means the destruction of everything and taking everything for themselves. It was an extraction and a liberation from a dictator who were in power. And Venezuelans asked for that and begged for that during a lot of time, because any liberal in the United States, Europe, Canada, or all these white countries never say nothing about human rights during the years where the people were oppressed in Venezuela. And nobody calls the international law when the government of Venezuela were killing young people. Nobody called the United Nations where our people were crossing the Darien Gap to go to the United States, they were crossing by Colombia, by Ecuador, by Peru, walking. Because if you see the map, you see the map of Colombia, you see the map of Ecuador, and you see the map of Peru. And during 2018 and during 2019, people were walking during weeks, escaping Venezuela because the situation. Nobody calls the United Nations.
Angel,
Let me finish. Nobody were calling the United Nations when Venezuelans didn't find any kind of food when they were to the supermarkets. Nobody calls the international law when the Venezuelans were to the hospitals and they couldn't find medicine. Also, I'm gonna finish with this. Everyone speaks about the embargo and the sanctions in Venezuela, but let me tell you something. The problems in Venezuela starts in 2008 with Chavez. Chavez died. Maduro take power in 2012. The first sanctions were made by Obama, a Democrat, in 2015. 2015, remember this. Trump getting power in 2016. Of course, he increased the sanctions, he increased the embargo, and with Biden, he increased the bid for Maduro. Biden created a pathway for deal with Maduro and all stuff because they were interested in the oil too. But for example, you have Justin Trudeau in Canada, who is a liberal, and he put sanctions in Venezuela, and nobody complains. You have Carney, who complains about the government in Venezuela and about the elections in Venezuela in 2024, and nobody complains. Kamala Harris complains about the situation in Venezuela, but nobody cares. Biden complains about Venezuela and nobody cares. But Trump did something that makes Venezuelans happy and something that Venezuelans ask for, and now everyone is complaining.
No
Come
one's
on, man.
complaining.
Like,
Here's the problem. I'm glad that you're happy that Venezuelans.
I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about you. Sorry
I
for
know,
that.
but I'm no,
saying
personally, I'm glad that Venezuela's personally, and I'm sure most Americans are personally happy that there's hope, that Venezuelans think they have hope. The problem that you think the outcome is good because they remove Maduro. I get it. It makes sense. The issue is that Trump and Rubio don't give a shit about the Venezuelans. They didn't do it for you. So while you look at it
That's wrong, though.
as a side benefit, you think it's a benefit to you because you think they're going to give a shit about Venezuela's. And history shows that that's not true. Now, I hope it's wrong. I hope something good comes out of this. But yes, they took action and you view it as a positive thing. And that's great. Again, I really hope things work out for Venezuela. But I don't think it's going to lead to anything tremendously positive. I hope I'm wrong. There's a way to do this, and the United States didn't do it in the right way. And I'm saying whether it was Obama or Kamala or whoever, Biden, they should have done something if they wanted to be in national priority. But Rubio did this because of Cuba, because he wants to overthrow the government in Cuba, and he's just using Venezuela as a way to do it.
Venezuela was colonized by Cuba, though. Right?
100%. Yeah, but for example, don't you think, for example, everything in the life is an interest? Because everyone were mentioning, Venezuela is going to be the new Iraq. But we're not Arabs, we're not Muslims. Why people don't say we can be the new Panama? Why people don't say we can be the new Japan? Why people don't say we can be the new South Korea?
That would be terrible. Panama's doing really badly right now.
Not true. You're lying.
Hang on, wait a minute. America is demanding that Panama wastes all of its water that it needs for drinking, yeah, in order that it can fill the canals, in order that American boats can come in and out of the canals.
Who built the canal?
Right? Now,
who built the canal? Who paid for the canal?
It doesn't matter in the slightest.
Who built the canal?
Angel, you didn't hear what I said. You didn't hear me. Right, there is a finite amount of drinking water in Panama. Trump wants everybody in Panama to die in order that the boats can float through the canal that exists there. Not about who built it. Trump did not create the clouds. He is not God. He doesn't create the drinking water that the people on that land need to live. Yeah, but he is demanding that they die in order his boats can float through. That is crazy.
Bro, what are you talking about?
You don't know about it.
These people make up the most ridiculous shit. I swear to God.
Well, no, because it's an engineering problem.
You just make shit up.
Go and Google this.
Dude, go and Google. Why don't you go there? You're talking to South Americans, right?
Hold on,
Give me
guys.
a chance to
Let him wrap
You
it
can
up.
check
There
this.
was a drought. I don't know how the drought's standing right now. A massive drought in Panama that allowed that the boats, the Panama Canal wasn't functioning properly, so they're having to use drinking water for the canal. That is true. How deep and widespread
gone
it is,
from
I don't know.
it's the ships that are getting through across the last decade have basically halved in number. Yeah, because of the droughts year on year,
Right.
it's getting drier and drier. It's an ongoing problem, and in another 10 years, basically millions will have to die in order to
You
put
don't
a
know
boat
that's
through
true
that.
because droughts come and
Yeah,
go.
that's a ridiculous statement.
Or millions will have to migrate somewhere else. Those are the two options when
All
a
right.
Or you
when a
bring
major
in
drought.
water,
George or
like
Jorge, you're up.
California does. Yeah, I wanted to add in something. Angel, I heard you say something. I agree with everything you said, by the way, bro. But you said the nationalization topic. Yes, PDVSA was nationalized in the 70s, but when people talk about nationalization of oil, they're talking about how Chavez took over ExxonMobil and the other oil companies. The U.S. companies were nationalized. That's what the claim
No,
is.
he kicked them out, right? And Chevron has a license still. And
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
right.
Yeah. So you guys are just talking about two different things. Like obviously the state oil was nationalized in the 70s, but the private companies were kicked out. Yeah, like you said.
Right.
So that
Oh,
was
okay,
the
okay.
difference. Yeah, and that was in like 2007, 2008.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish up, George, and I'm going to bring Sam
Oh
in
no,
as
but
well.
I'm with everything Angel said. I don't think you mentioned that Rubio and Trump don't care. It's just not true. Trump is the one who expanded the temporary protection status for Venezuelans in his first term. He tried to assassinate Maduro in his first term. Rubio has made it his life's mission to crush socialism in South America and help the people there. The concept that they don't care about Venezuelans is just like completely false. There's no politician in North America that has done more for the Venezuelan people than Trump. So that's just false. Like it's completely false.
Angel,
Oh, boy.
you mentioned that you felt that people generally hadn't given a toss about Venezuela, weren't interested, and weren't saying anything about the difficulties there. I've personally stood on platforms with people who are in exile from Venezuela. I've stood with some of your National Mining Union. I've stood with their leaders who have lived in exile for many years in Britain. And at the NUM meeting here in the northeast of England, something called the Big Meet, left wing circles. Jordan's going to no doubt hate this, but this is a fact. Left wing circles have been taking care of exiled and fleeing Venezuelans for decades. So we have cared. The problem is, there's not many left wing governments in the world. There's not many socialist governments that can take care of them. And George, you might not have noticed, but those people who have been fleeing Venezuela were socialists.
No, they weren't.
No, they
No,
weren't.
they weren't. They were poor
They
people.
weren't
They were
capitalists.
They were people
They
of
were
all
socialists.
demographics. They weren't socialists. The socialists have
No doubt there's some of every type of demographic, but the ones that I've met, and I know it's only anecdotal, but the ones that I've met were socialists, were out and out committed socialists. But
Okay, so you met three socialists, but the majority of us were just regular people.
But they were democratic socialists, not authoritarian dictators.
It's the same shit.
It's not
Socialism is socialism.
It's the same garbage. Democratic slavery versus regular slavery.
Britain is a democratic socialist country, yeah, and we do just fine, and we have been since 1945. We had the most socialist government of any country in the world in 1945, and we still benefit from it today, in spite of
if you call that benefit, sure.
Well, we do.
But you're actually
you have a managed
socialist
decline. Your country is in a managed decline.
Time out.
It's been in a managed decline ever since 1951, when the capitalist Churchill took back over, and ever since then we've only had capitalist governments. We've never had a socialist government.
All right. You guys are both a little bit
have
wrong.
A socialist welfare state.
There's only one. That's bullshit. We stop, George. You don't know what socialism is. There's only one socialistic.
Trust me, I know much better than you what socialism is.
Then what is the only socialistic country in the world?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I couldn't hear you. What did you say?
What is there's only one true socialistic country, major socialistic country in the world that has a socialistic
That's not true. That's a very narrow definition of socialism.
I'm using the broad definition of socialism. It's China.
You're using
There
an
are
extremely
social
narrow.
programs. There are certain aspects of various European countries that operate many socialistic industries and programs. They're not considered socialistic countries. The UK is not
Yes,
socialism.
America is more socialist than Europe
Well,
if you want to go that route.
if you look at UK post-war to 1951, we were absolutely a socialist country, and we still have a lot of the institutions from that era that still survived till today.
Right, but you work on a
But they would only
capitalistic
survive.
economic
But
system.
but
We're not
but I have a
defining
question.
socialism as welfare programs. That's not. If
All right.
that was
Yeah.
the case, America is more socialist.
Time out.
It's everything.
We're going way off of the topic that I want to be talking about today, which is mostly focused on talking about Venezuela and if Venezuelans are happy and what the real agenda is. If we can't stick to that, and I actually have Salmon who's been up here for Salmon, whatever your name is. You've been up here for 30 minutes and haven't gotten a word in, I don't believe.
Hello, give me a chance. I was listening to the podcast and all the conversation with the guest in place. It's interesting how Venezuelan nationals are supporting what Trump did recently to Maduro, the president, and I don't believe a mistake can be corrected with another mistake, right? Like a certain president that's been elected by the Venezuelan people overnight being abducted by Trump
Maduro was not elected.
and calling it.
He wasn't elected. He was voted out in a massive landslide, Salman, and then he ignored that and decided that he was going to be a dictator instead. So
Well,
this is why the left don't like
what
him.
I do believe right now is that he was a sitting president, and whatever Venezuelans want or the democracy they want, it doesn't come easy. It comes through the process of exercising their.
We want the extraction of Maduro, bro. What are you talking about?
What do you want to be in place of Maduro, though, Angel?
Right, what's the
Sorry?
plan, Angel?
What do you want in place of Maduro?
Maria
Listen.
Corina.
Well, no, I don't like Maria Corina, but what I can say is everything in life is better than Maduro for what we have in Venezuela. And I'm going to explain you why. Because we've been
You got to
on
be,
the floor.
be concise. Let's keep it tight.
Yeah, like for example, we had a really horrible administration who separate families, who destroyed the economy, and who destroyed the country. And it's not
But
because
what do you want? But what do you want? I understand you're happy. I'm
change.
glad you're happy. But what
a change, something,
anything, right?
something different.
want
With
things
no
to get
plan.
worse.
Javier Milei,
Right, okay.
give us
So, this could get
Bukele or
worse or it
Milei
could
or
get
any of
better.
that.
It could get worse or it could get better, Angel, yeah? Just as an example of how it could get worse, it could go full-blown Franco or full-blown H-man, yeah? And you could have a new leader who's a mad dictator who creates a load of railways and death camps, yeah? Or it could get better. So, for all you were really frustrated with how bad it is, it really could get worse. I'm assuming you want it to get better. Is that correct?
No, of course, but if you see, don't mention Franco, because Franco was in a specific case in Spain, and when Franco finished his dictatorship, because he died, because for the reason he left the dictatorship because he was really old. Franco left a country who were stand up. Spain were stand up with Franco. You can be agree with him, you can be disagree with him, and I understand that in different many point of view because he was a dictator. He came from a civil war, but Spain, when Franco died, he was respected by Europe, by the world, and he was standing up for the people in Spain. And I'm telling this because I came from my family is from Spain, and they escaped from Franco. So
Okay.
I can be, objective when I say he had good things and he had bad things. Also, if you ask me, I don't trust the opposition leaders in Venezuela. But you know what I trust? If Marco Rubio he takes the control or he takes whatever he takes in Venezuela, I'm gonna trust him more than what we have now. Because now we have criminals. We have a criminal group. We don't have politicians. We have criminal groups. We have opposition leaders who sold Venezuela to the criminal groups, and we have people who destroy our country completely. So
you want to become the 51st state? You want a foreign?
Oh, that's a dream.
entity.
That's a dream.
That's bizarre to me, but totally that's a legitimate position to hold. It makes you a traitor to Venezuela, like literally, but
No, it
If
doesn't.
that's what you want, that's what you
If
want. But
siding with
look,
a dictatorial regime is being allegiant to Venezuela, then you just have no idea what you're saying.
well,
That's a
there
What
is.
he
that's a
was
crazy
saying,
thing to
what
say.
he was saying
A
is
person
earlier,
would
if the
want their
people
state to
want
have
them,
sovereignty.
hold on, like he mentioned
Venezuela
earlier,
is not the state.
if
It's not just like the
Venezuelans,
government.
he's promoting earlier, he promoted that if you want true liberty and freedom and you want a democracy, the people have to rise up and do it themselves.
Yeah.
What do
But
you
we
think we've been
did
trying to
it. We
do?
did
But they
it.
don't.
We
What do you
did
They
think
it.
don't
we've
want
been doing?
democracy. They
Hey,
don't want it.
host. Sorry for interrupt, but if you can investigate about the protest in 2017, 2024, and 2014, look for the pictures. Look for who died and look for the videos exactly from 2017. Look in YouTube. You're gonna see the moment of the war in Venezuela. And you know what's the problem? Venezuelan people, the civilians, we don't have guns, and we try
Yeah.
everything. And when I say everything, is everything by the legal way, fighting on the streets and everything. And you know what? If you're fighting against an army who have all the guns provided by China and Russia, you're gonna lose because you don't have guns.
And you're
And
No,
fighting
but
those
Cuban
no,
military.
right. You have to
also,
be
yeah.
willing to. You have to be willing to
If
lose
I may
millions.
interject real quick,
You lost tens of
I'm
thousands, but you
American.
have
I'm
to be.
just
Yeah,
tired
You have
of
to be willing to lay down more
people
than that,
talking
Anthony.
about how Trump, quote unquote, I take that personally because I'm an American. He's my president. That we're there to steal the oil. I mean, did we steal Kuwait's oil? Did we steal Iran's oil, Iraq's oil? I
Well,
mean, to malign our country
beyond
like
second.
that is disgraceful, especially coming from some of these Europeans from all parts of the world, or white people from all parts of the world that are doing nothing to help the Venezuelans. And finally, someone that everyone hates, loves to hate, Trump, is helping the Venezuelans
oh,
at least with some hope. And then the only thing the left wing can say is, oh, it could go bad from here. It was
Why?
going bad.
all
The
right,
reason
time out.
this
All
was
right,
this,
hold on. We
if
heard
I
your
may, real
point.
quick,
You're,
if I may finish real
yeah,
quick,
finish up.
It's
if I
not
may
a
finish.
left wing, right wing
The
thing.
reason this movement was made right now, it had to do with the communist influence, Maduro allowing the Chinese and the Russians to come into Venezuela. If he wouldn't have done that, odds are we would have been hands off, and it would have been the Venezuelan people's in their own hands to take it back. As another gentleman earlier suggested, if they need to stay and fight, this young man's making a point. They don't have the weapons to do that, not because they've been disarmed. Yet every other left wing country, this guy just said earlier, oh, there's not that many left wing countries anymore. Literally, all of Europe is left wing. Where's the right wing country in Europe?
Right.
Romania.
Poland?
Europe.
Oh, okay.
There's many of them.
No, Europe has
France,
pioneered
Germany,
neoliberalism.
England,
Chinito,
Spain,
Belgium, Italy,
Finito.
Spain.
It's a matter
Spain.
of
What are
fact.
y'all talking about, man?
All right.
Finito. It's a matter of fact that Europe has pioneered neoliberalism, which is an extremist right wing
It's not
What
subsidized
is
extremist.
version
It's
neoliberalism?
just
of
common
capitalism.
sense, bro.
No, it's
Neoliberalism
not.
doesn't exist.
Neoliberalism.
Neoliberalism
And
doesn't exist.
stop calling communism socialism. It's communism. China is not socialist. It's
No,
communist.
that's
Right.
not.
Okay.
No, time
But
out. Time out.
right,
Everybody stop.
mate.
Everybody stop. I got to call that out. You don't. You're saying a couple of naive things here, Mister. What's your name? Chang.
Yeah, of course.
Chan. China runs an economic system based on socialism. The party.
Hong Kong does.
Stop. The party is communism. The communists don't even believe in their own ideology of communism. They believe in an economic system of socialism, not
They
communism.
enforce communism on their people.
Hold on. And as an American who sounds older than you and has been around, not the Europeans telling you, you're being naive to say that
I'm
people
54 years
in the
old.
first, are you okay? As a First Amendment right, that we can't criticize or other people can't criticize an American president who has broken all kinds of laws and the
You're
rule
not
of law?
criticizing, sir. You're saying that he's going to steal
I didn't say
your
he's going to steal. I said,
oil.
no, I said, you haven't been here that long. Rubio is doing this for Cuba, but you weren't probably here for that. So
I heard that.
to make an extent that, yes, American companies are not there to steal oil because they've said, the American U.S. oil companies have said they don't want to extract oil in Venezuela because they don't need it. They're not going to make the investment in Venezuela because they have Canadian oil. There is no reason. Exxon and Mobil and Exxon, Marathon, Valero, and Chevron in the past have talked about wanting to have access to Venezuelan oils. But they don't need it anymore because they invested $500 billion in Canadian oil because they didn't get access to Venezuela oil. So no, we're not, the oil companies don't want Venezuela oil. Trump has said that the oil companies are going to come back in. They're not, because they would have to invest tens
They
of
will
billions of
come back
dollars.
in. They will come back in
but
to help the Venezuelan
Dude,
people
there's
if
6
Trump
refineries
influences
in
them to come
Texas.
back in, just like he's influenced other industries to come back to the United States, for example. What we want to do is we want to help the
Oh,
Venezuelans free themselves
you're
from
in
this.
la la land if you think Trump wants to help the
hey,
Venezuela. Give me a break.
host,
Yeah.
Well,
host.
yeah, see, that's my
He's
point.
never
But
even helped his
That's
neighbour.
what I want to get
but
down to. Is you're maligning our president because you think he has
Absolutely.
some ulterior motive to
Of
be the
course he
king of
does.
Venezuela,
He's
right?
never talked
He
about
wants to be the king
Venezuela.
of Venezuela. He wants to
but
be the
ho-
king of Venezuela.
but host.
That's
I
what you're
think I think it
saying.
had more to do with oil prices on the global
We
market
have
than it did to
millions of
do with
Venezuelans
extracting
in our
oil.
country that we've helped them with money, with homes, all we can with health care. We want to help the people. But the only way we're going to help the people is to kick the communists
All of
out
a
of
sudden, you give
Venezuela.
a shit about the
Amen,
Venezuelans.
brother.
Give me a fucking break. You don't care.
I'm a Latino,
And
But
sir,
Venezuelans are
and I
getting
do
jumped
care
on
about
by
our
ICE.
Latino countries out there. Venezuela used to be the richest country in Latin America until these communists came into it and
My
stole all
man.
the money. You
that's
guys,
Benito
true.
gets it.
you Americans need to get your
Did
head out of your ass and stop
okay?
talking about the president like he's gonna be the king. He's not gonna. Where was Obama? Where was Biden?
All right.
Where was Clinton?
Thanks for
They didn't do
joining. I
shit for
appreciate the
Venezuela.
nonsense. I
Yeah,
appreciate your
you can cut me off.
perspective.
That's fine because you know I'm right.
No, I know you're wrong. I can't
Didn't he
handle your
know?
idiocy. That's really that simple.
Exactly. That's fine.
What's he wrong about though?
Do you guys know about the Venezuelan the Russian Black Fleet using Venezuela as a laundry essentially to launder their black market oil?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Like,
I think that's probably the biggest oil factor in this, because when you've got crazy amounts of oil coming out of Russia and it can't be sold, then American pumped oil is more valuable. When the market's flooded with crazy amounts of Russian oil via Venezuela, that Venezuela's buying from Russia extremely cheap, then Venezuela's getting very rich and it's bumping up the price of and it's competing with the price of American oil. So I think that was possibly a big factor in this. But extraction of oil from Venezuela itself, perhaps not, because like you said, host, you don't think these private companies are going to go and set up pumps there. Over in the North Sea in Britain, they stopped around about 2014. They stopped maintaining the oil pumps here because it just wasn't. There was more oil to be extracted, but with us using less oil and shifting to gas, things like that, and the extraordinary cost of extraction, they just decided not to maintain these things and not to replace them. Even before that, 10 years before that, they decided not to replace them.
Well,
So it was a 10-year
Venezuela
period.
only becomes wealthy when their oil is about $100 a barrel. Their oil is not very profitable. So
Right.
to move, and
but
remember, they only have 900,000 barrels a day coming out of the ground. They used to have 3.5 million. This may be just as much about ensuring that the petrodollar out of Venezuela oil stays intact, because they don't want the new BRICS currency unit to have the oil bought and sold using the BRICS unit currency. So they
host.
hold on. So
Sorry,
it's
sorry,
likely
sorry.
that the U.S. taking control, if they take control over the oil industry in Venezuela, that even those 900,000 barrels of oil at least are going to be paid for in dollars and be controlled by American companies. But in order for them to get back to extracting 3.5 million barrels of oil a day out of the ground is going to take an enormous investment, which the U.S. oil companies are not going to do. They might even say they're going to do it, but they will not do it, because from every business perspective, it makes no sense for them to invest anything in Venezuela when they have all they need and all the refineries are essentially operating at full capacity to refine dark, heavy crude. So there's no incentive. They will cannibalize their own business if they actually do invest money in Venezuela and pump more oil, which means the Venezuelans, even if there were going to get some benefit from that oil, oil prices are not high enough for them to see any rewards. And you're basically just having the United States take over the oil so that it ensures that it's going to be paid in petrodollars and not go to Russia and to China. I mean, this is not that much about oil. Everybody's talking so much about the oil. This is more about America having control over the hemisphere, and people who think it's going to benefit
But
Venezuelans, I
But
don't
why
think
is that
so.
bad?
but host,
I didn't say
let
it's
me
bad.
tell you something. Like, sorry, Jorge, let me just explain something to him. Listen, when Russia take over on the oil of Venezuela in the legal or illegal way, I don't give a fuck. Honestly, the oil industry in Venezuela were destroyed, and they make the people poor. When US have the control in Venezuela before Chavez, Venezuela were, I'm not gonna say it was the perfect country, but it was completely better than what we have now.
But they were
So
producing 3.5
you
million
measure,
barrels of oil.
yeah,
Angel, right?
but
Angel, Chavez did something really stupid. He did exactly the same thing that South American government did when they, in the first years in the post-apartheid period. Yeah, they did it with farming, and they basically kicked out everybody who understood farming and
yeah,
knew how to run a farm, and they deliberately created a massive brain drain. So all the intelligence, all the knowledge left the country. The same
yeah,
thing happened with Chavez with the oil. He kicked out everybody who knew how to extract oil. So he destroyed his own oil industry there. You can have an alternative to that. You can have the exact same people doing the exact same work because they're the best in the world for a wage that's maybe 1 or 2% higher. Yeah, and you're just cutting out the shareholders. That would have been the sensible thing for him to do, but he didn't do that because probably because he's just so anti-American after getting ripped off for several years that he overreacted. But that would have been the smart thing to do. Don't be, the essential, like the key feature of owning your own oil fields and extracting it for your country. It's what Norway did. It's why Norway's got, I think, the biggest wealth fund in the world. It's why they've got so much security. They're incredibly wealthy. Um, you should have just done what Norway did.
I think Norway's the only
but
country with mats. Angel, you're going to come up next because a lot of people want to hear from you. I just want to mention Norway is the only country that seems to do their oil wealth fund properly. Everybody else who is a wealthy oil country, excluding maybe the United States, ends up floundering those assets, whether it's
Yeah.
Russia or so forth. Saudi Arabia obviously is using its assets to do a lot of social good as well. But go ahead, Angel.
But host, you mentioned something like it was interesting when you mentioned Canada about the extraction of oil in Canada, but you forgot the fact about the government that we have in Canada. Listen, I've been living in Canada for too many years. I'm not Canadian citizen, but I live here legally. I'm doing myself pretty well. I work in construction. I build houses
Yeah,
here.
well, what does that have to do with the
I'm afraid.
government? It's just the oil companies that have
Yeah,
access to the oil fields.
no, but the government were blocking by the environmental laws the extraction of the oil and doing deals with the United States. Even Mark Carney, since he took leadership here, he couldn't get done any deal with Donald Trump. And he were telling to Canadians, hey, yeah, we're going to fight Donald Trump because Donald Trump is wrong. And he couldn't even have a deal. Justin Trudeau blocks the deal with the oil in Canada because the carbon tax that we have here and by the environmental laws that we have here. Also,
Yeah, but
the
what's
American,
I understand that, but what's your point? They're still extracting enough oil out of Canada to keep the refineries at capacity.
yeah, of course, but he couldn't get a deal. So the American companies have all the infrastructure and all the technology to deal with the crude from Venezuela because the crude in Venezuela is like more heavy. It's heavier than the other oil in the world. So
No, it's very
honestly,
similar. It's very similar to Canadian oil. They're both heavy
yeah,
crude.
but exactly, that's what I'm saying. But what I'm trying to say, if United States invests in Venezuela, of course they're going to control the hemisphere, and I don't see anything wrong with that because we've been controlled by other imperialistic countries, and honestly, man, like I don't see the problem because we were really fine when we get the control from the U.S. and I don't understand
Yeah,
what's the
but that was
problem.
because of the presidents were different, right? You're talking about like Raver mentioned is that once Chavez came in, he overcorrected. He should have done that. So it was better beforehand. Yes, you're right. Again, I
Yeah,
want
but
the
what's the
best for
problem?
Venezuela
But what's the problem if US do that again? What's the problem?
because you're
You don't want US to destroy your industries again, do you? You want somebody to run things properly.
The U.S. didn't
Yeah,
destroy. The U.S. created the industry. Like, what do you
no, the
mean?
Yeah,
US
George,
funded.
George, that wasn't what I was saying. He seemed to say that he wanted the US to come in and do what Chavez did. You know, it
No,
wasn't.
no, no, no. They want the U.S. to come in and enforce property rights and get rid of the expropriation of property that happened under socialist dictators and socialist policy in general, which is antithetical, right, to any form of prosperity. That's what we want. We don't want socialists. The problem is the socialist, not America. It's very simple.
You're obviously a fundamentalist.
No, it's not fundamentalist. It's just
Of
common.
course it is.
Common
You're a crazy
sense.
fundamentalist.
No, it's just common
Capitalism
sense,
has
bro.
ruined all of these countries. Like, you know,
What?
you came
Explain to
in
me
and squeezed the
how did
life
they
out.
ruin Venezuela? Explain to me.
They came in.
Okay.
They got a load of elite people to back companies. Yeah. They
Okay.
then extracted loads of oil, sold it on the global market, and gave huge dividends to those tiny few elite people. Yeah. And let the people in Venezuela struggle. And then
When, so
Chavez came along
what point are they struggling then? At what point? When is the struggle happening?
throughout that whole period.
What period?
The whole period
well,
when American capitalist interests were extracting oil and selling it and taking a profit from that, rather
Bro,
than
you're a
filling up.
socialist
And so,
apologist. You have no idea what you're talking about. Like
well,
honestly, you
Norway
really
at
have
the
no
same.
idea what you're talking
No,
about.
how many trillions of pounds does any capitalist country in the world have in the bank right now in the green? Yeah, name
What does
one.
that have to do with anything?
There's only one country I know of that has money in the bank, yeah, that isn't in debt, and that's Norway, and they have a £10 trillion fund.
What does it matter?
hold on, Jorge.
Venezuela could have been as
Is it
rich as
George or
Norway
Jorge?
if it wasn't for
Whatever.
America.
George is fine. Whatever you
George,
want.
let me ask you a question. You've been criticizing a lot of things, which is fine. That's what we're here for. We'll have a panel, have discussions. What do you
Nice.
think is going to happen? What do you think? What do you think's like? What's the plan here? What's going to happen?
Oh, I mean, it's very simple. They've clearly identified, Rubio and Trump have clearly identified that Delcy Rodriguez is like the best chance they have to make a deal. They essentially are forcing her to have a transition phase. I think they gave her like 90 days to come to terms. And then after that, they want two key things to happen. They want the government to bring back private property, as a concept. And they obviously want them to get rid of that government and install a new government. I don't know if there's going to be an election. I don't know if they're going to put Maria Corina in. I have no idea. But they need this government to... Yo, can you mute?
Yeah, I did. I'm trying to.
But yeah, they need this government. The whole Maduro regime needs to be getting rid of. Does that answer the question?
And then what's going to happen? So yeah, you said okay, they're going to 90 days. They're going to install something. And what do you think is likely to happen? What do you
Then
think
they have a new
Rubio's
government.
grand plan here is, or Trump's grand plan that's going to make
Yeah,
life
it's
better
very simple.
for Venezuelans?
It's very similar to what you saw with Bukele in El Salvador or Argentina with Milei. Is that you have pro-business policies. You guys call it, I guess, neoliberalism, whatever you want to call it, pro-capitalist policies, where people can actually own private property, and the country becomes investable again. And then you have, you obviously there's the oil industry, but there's also farming. There's rare earths. There's Maria Corina was talking about tech industry. They want to invest and build businesses there, and bring back Venezuelans that will actually create jobs and go back to being a prosperous nation, as it was.
All right, I
So
can't
Americans want to
disagree with
invest in
anything
American-
your utopia you're describing, but you
Not
believe that's going to
utopia.
happen.
It was reality.
It's not
It
gonna
was
be
reality when I was there.
No, but I don't think it's a.
American money to Venezuela. Surely,
What's that?
like why would you
But-
invest in Venezuela instead of America?
Because because during history, the Americans did that with other countries like Cuba before the revolution, with Puerto Rico, with the Virgin Islands,
Hold on, Anhel, one sec. I want you guys to get something clear, because my whole I'm from Venezuela. I was born there. My parents are from there. You know what my dad worked there in Venezuela? He worked for Coca-Cola and Kodak. You know what those are? Those are American companies. What Americans don't understand is that all the investment, all the innovation, including in the oil industry, but in banking, in tech, in finance, it was American industry that was brought over to Venezuela, and that's what made it a prosperous country. So
it's actually true.
What's that?
It's true. It's
Why?
actually true. Completely true.
So you guys are
Why
saying
did
like,
they
oh,
go?
what's
Why
going to
did they go there?
happen? I'll tell you what's going to happen. What happens in every single country. Google just built an office in El Salvador. El Salvador is now one of the safest cities, one of the safest countries in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah. Why did they
What's
go
the
there
issue?
back
What
then?
is the problem? Like, I don't understand how you can be against this. Like, it's actually just insane to me.
George, I'm sure that
I'm not
Google
against
will
it, by
set
the
up an
way.
office in Venezuela. Yeah, it's not difficult for them to do. It's very, very cheap. It doesn't really create a lot of jobs or wealth or anything in the. These little tech firms are not economic boosters. They don't drive economies. They make
They
a tiny
they
bit
create
of money.
job and they create more
Very,
investment.
they create
But the most important thing
a
is to get the
tiny
money.
amount of jobs.
No,
Tiny
it's not
amount.
It
tiny.
is
It is
tiny.
not
The
tiny.
technology sector is
Minuscule.
tiny with data centers and so forth.
You can go through 10
Minuscule.
different sectors. It could be food, hospitality, tourism, tech, oil, healthcare. It could be all. It's every single sector is improved when you have a pro business, pro free market philosophy. This is what we want. This is what we've been craving.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't understand why you're so against it.
In
You're
Europe, we
talking.
don't have a pro business.
I know that's why you guys
No, we do
I'll
have
see
pro
you in
business.
10
We
years when
don't have.
you're
We
on the
don't have.
trajectory of Venezuela. Enjoy it. Have fun
We
with it.
don't. In Europe, we don't have a pro free market
That's
Yes, you
strategy.
why
have
your economy
Liechtenstein,
is.
you have
We have.
Luxembourg, you have Netherlands,
We
you
have
have
the
Norway,
Austrian.
you have Finland, you have Sweden,
The
you have
For the
Nordic
last
countries
Switzerland.
are
for the
super
last 40
capitalist, by the way.
years, for the last 40 years, we've had the Austrian School of Economics, which is neoliberalism
You
No, you
have
instead.
haven't.
Ireland.
That was not implemented anywhere. That's not true.
It's
You
been
guys have welfare
implemented
states.
all over Europe. I mean, France is especially like that. You have
Bro,
Britain
you
is really
guys,
like that.
France is a
Like
welfare state. What are you
my
talking
Oh,
about?
Jesus.
my
Stop. You're both like everyone. You can't even just balance your thoughts. You're so far down the rabbit's hole. Of course, capitalism is the better system over pure socialism, but there is no, like you mentioned, George, before,
Yeah, they're
the American,
mixed economies.
there's a balance, right? Social democracy is actually the right balance. Now, what that means to each person is a little bit different, but of course, you have to have strong regulations on capitalism because
But
otherwise
they
you're just
don't.
completely exploited by every
For
single
what?
company.
But that's the joke. There's more
Well,
regulation in
the
the U.S.
the
than there is in the
pure
Nordic countries.
the
So
pure
like,
capitalist doesn't believe that that you can be exploited by a free market, though, and they don't believe
Right,
that a
but
monopoly can
you know,
exist.
but that pure
no,
capitalist may
that's
think
not
that,
what
but
we
it's
believe, bro.
absurd.
Is that not what you believe,
Hold on.
George?
Here, I'll explain very simply what I believe. I believe that any means that the government takes is worse off than just the market.
That is
That the market,
idiotic.
the
That
government,
is,
the government
But the
is more
government can never
subject.
oh,
run
please.
anything
All right,
better.
stop.
The
Again,
government is more subject to corruption than the market.
no.
That's true.
They're both going to be corrupt.
Corrupt governments are more subject to corruption. Better governments that are more efficient are not subject to that corruption. Government is the only thing that is there to protect people. And a democratic government protects people through regulations. So saying that demeaning
What
all for
regulation? That's not
government
true, though.
makes no sense. What do you mean it's not true? Of course it's true.
But Host, you're forgetting the fact that
Regulations are what
a
create the
state,
moats.
yeah, but the state is the monopoly of the power, and the state works as a company. So you're telling me the state is going to
No, the
defend
state
people?
is not.
It's not
In
true.
a democracy, the state does not work as a company. In a democracy, the
It
people
works.
are the ultimate rulers. In a democratic republic, the people are the ultimate power centers of a democracy. And
But
it's
the
the
politicians
people.
take the decisions.
What's
The
that?
politicians are the ones who take the politicians are the ones who take the
Politicians,
decisions.
if
No,
they're
but you
not
get to
bought and
decide who
paid
they
for,
are.
if the politicians are not bought and paid for by the capitalists, then they represent their constituents. And then if they represent their constituents, they figure out the right balance to restrict unbridled capitalism and to ensure there's a balance between a pro-business, pro-capitalistic system while at the same time maintaining social protections for the people. That is the balance. People arguing about all this right and versus left. There is no, both of them are wrong. It's the balance beam that is the right.
I
We
disagree
we
for
don't
so
have a
many
lot of
reasons.
corruption in our government, to be fair, over in the UK, and it's because there isn't a lot of money in it. Like most politicians, uh, don't have a lot of wealth. They shop in the same places as me. They live in the same type of housing, maybe slightly bigger, slightly better, but there's not much difference. And they don't fly in private jets and all that. The wages are capped quite low, and the main thing is our spending limits are completely different to America. Like, you can only spend £18,000 on a seat, equivalent to a state governor's seat. You would spend that on a single advert. You'd spend millions on a local campaign. That's the key in democracy. You cannot have too much money in your democracy, or else it won't be democratic.
It's not too much money. It's how the balance of how that money is distributed across its entire society. And how money impacts the democratic system and the representation, it matters. By the way, guys, you've all been here for a long time. It's been a great conversation. I have a bunch of people that want to get in, so I want to kind of do a whole new panel. Juan has been here. Juan, where are you from? So I'm going to drop you out, guys. I hope you do tune in.
Thank you.
On future.
Thank you for letting me talk to you.
Yeah, Angel, I appreciate you having here, especially being a Venezuelan, and George, you as well. And River.
They all good, by the way. No hard feelings. It was fun to be combative. Like,
of course,
love you all.
Venezuela. I hope it
awesome.
improves.
Thank you, Hollis. Thank you, River.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angel.
Nice to meet you.
I'll be doing this maybe again later and certainly tomorrow. See you guys.
Awesome. It's been a good panel. Take care.
Thank you. All right, so we'll refresh the panel here for a moment. We got Juan here. I just want to mention before, Juan, if you're still here, there's someone said that I was just describing socialism. No, you don't know what socialism is. Socialism is when the all industries from the entire countries is owned by the society. That is socialism, where you don't have capitalism, where all industry is owned by the government, or actually society is the right to the society. I didn't explain that properly, but anyway, Juan, are you here? All right, got a few new people coming in. Lisa G coming in. TWH, if you're around still, coming in. Rick coming in, and Big T, I've invited you a couple times, but for some reason it didn't take.
My man. What's going on?
All right, hang on.
I was muted. Sorry.
Oh, Juan, is that you, Juan?
Yeah. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in Venice, Venice Beach. Right on. It's a pretty liberal place, but
sure.
I was listening to this whole dialogue, and the beauty of these lives is that you have so many different opinions and so many different voices coming from all over the world, and it's actually pretty cool.
That's awesome.
And we all have our own opinions. We all have our own, ideology, which is cool. And when I hear things, I have to wait a minute. You got to come with facts. You got to come with some form of yes, this is right, this is wrong. But in this world, we're living in a MAGA world, and unfortunately, it's no longer, facts are no longer an issue. And with AI and the ability to fake videos, when it comes to this Venezuela situation, you're seeing a lot of fake videos. You're seeing a lot of people celebrating on the streets, and these old ladies crying. They're like, "Oh, we're going to get our democracy back." But none of that is real, man. None of that. I mean, Latin America has always had a situation where American corporations going into these countries in Latin America and just basically just reaping the resources.
Union Fruit
Am
Company.
I wrong? Yeah, am I wrong? Is anybody going to dispute me on that? There's no dispute.
People reposting shit from soccer games and saying it's because of Maduro or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But all sorts of stuff. Right. But I'm just earlier there was these a couple of these guests. One of them was really young, and he was just basically saying yeah, we love Americans to come in and take over our country. Bro, what are you talking about? American corporations come in Latin America, and they basically rape the resources, and they profit, because capitalism has this really destructive, evil side of it, where they just profit off the resources, and the working class, or the peasants in Latin America, are basically left to fend for themselves. And that's what happened in Venezuela. That's what happened in Cuba. But the crazy thing, I'll tell you right now, the crazy thing is that Marco Rubio, who's heading this whole fucking thing in Venezuela, he's a child. Marco Rubio is a child, and he's got this bug about Cuba, and Venezuela is actually helping Cuba to stay afloat because of sanctions, American sanctions in Cuba for fucking 40 years or whatever. Every American president has sanctioned Cuba. Obama tried to relieve the sanctions, but fucking Republicans were like, no, no. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't want to be
Right,
like
but the Cuban
I'm
American,
not trying to educate anybody.
yeah, just so
I'm
you know,
just
the
telling you
Cuban
my
American
experience because
community doesn't want.
I'm from Colombia.
Yeah, the Cuban
You know,
American community actually wants to see the overthrow of Castro's, the successor to Castro's regime. They're pretty much unified, including Rubio, that want obviously regime change in Cuba.
Right, but I'll tell you why. American political system, they hate the idea of socialism in Latin America. Why do you think they hate this? Why do you think they hate the idea?
Who's that? Who you're referring to?
I'm asking anybody. Why do you think American capitalism hates the idea of socialism?
Like, because they don't want those countries to have control over their own resources,
Exactly.
socialism or not.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly. So the American media is going to
India for copper.
Right. So the American media is going to sell you on some bullshit war in Latin America. They've done it for years. Every American administration has tried to sell you on a war, and it's always failed. It's always failed. Okay. But you know what? Who has the power? Who has the world power right now? America. Who's in charge of the American administration right now? You're talking. They don't even hold back. They tell you exactly what they want. And you heard Trump say, "No, we're going to go in there and take our fucking oil." He basically said, "This is our oil." So, is that legitimate, or is that just are we like clapping our hand? Or yeah, amazing. We're going to go steal their oil. Now the Chinese are sitting back, going like, "All right, we're going to give you 72 hours to decide." You think Trump's intelligent enough to figure that one out? No, he's a child. He's a fucking child.
Rick?
Anybody want to dispute me on that?
Rick is in China. So Rick, I'm sure you have a response. Just don't go off the cliff, please.
Yeah, well, no, I think that this is like one of the things that people are missing. The day that that attack happened and that Maduro was kidnapped, there was a Chinese delegation in Venezuela. And
Yes.
they were cutting a deal for like more investment. I think that this has a lot to do with the new Cold War. This is U.S.-China stuff too. There's a reason that they're going after Iran and they're going after Venezuela, and it's because that's where China gets its oil from.
Thank you.
Like China's getting its oil from these countries, and if they can embargo the oil at the source, they don't have to get into because they know like there's been war game after war game that shows that they're going to lose if they go directly after China in the straits, like in the Pacific. And so if they can go to the source and block and sanction and like regime change and change the flows and control the prices and the exports in these places, they think that they can choke the Chinese economy. I don't think it will work. Like and Russia too. That's the other place.
I don't think. Well, listen, it's only 900 bill. It's only 900,000 barrels a day. It's going to have no real substantial impact on China or Russia. It's not substantial enough. So it's
No, I agree. I totally agree. But what about BRICS? Let's talk about BRICS.
BRICS.
Well, let's talk about the Chinese
BRICS has
currency.
they're working. Listen, BRICS is becoming a slight possible threat to the dollar. Obviously, if there's enough control over oil that's traded between BRICS and not the petrodollar, and this is what that's about as well, right? So even 900,000 barrels that has to be paid in the petrodollar going forward is an extra solidification of the U.S. petrodollar and the U.S. as the global reserve currency, because BRICS is trying.
Holding on by a string.
I wouldn't say straying. If we continue to lose our trust around the world, then absolutely. Then BRICS could be. Well, BRICS is never
Yeah.
going to be a direct
Yeah.
threat to the U.S. dollar. Never, ever, ever.
I got to say something here.
Yeah, go ahead,
So,
TW.
That's very funny.
so as far I'm not going to talk about like geopolitics or what the future holds or what could happen in Venezuela or anything like that. I think all of it is just another misdirection. It's another example of this regime that we have now just pushing buttons and trying to instigate a fight. They're just trying to instigate an attack on United States soil and instigate a civil war so that they can enact a higher or a different agenda. And that is to ensure that the elites stay in power. It doesn't matter what brand you put on the government is. Doesn't matter if they call it a socialist or, democratic republic, capitalist, whatever. You can label it whatever you want. It's an oligarchy, and it's basically they're instigating, the fact that they want to kill us all.
Well, let's see. You have to understand that all dictators or autocracies, non-democracies, are basically transactional. So there is a world right now in the United States administration, particularly with Trump, since he's so transactional, and that's the only thing he understands. He doesn't operate with values. So you can see a world where Trump says, we're basically going to carve up the world into these different zones. China, you're going to control here. Russia can control here. We're going to control our hemisphere. And that works for all dictators until it doesn't, right? Until they decide they can take more. So they work on this very transactional basis because we're not operating as a democratic republic. We're, of course, as you know, TW, as you hear me preach all the time, we're operating as an oligarchy or as a corporatocracy. And we basically have all these different forces that want to carve up even American democracy so they can carve up their economic, strangleholds.
100%. 100%.
And that's the
Anyways,
problem with this. That's the problem with this.
Yeah, that's the whole thing is, it's to get us all distracted. It's problem, reaction, solution. They have a solution in mind that is going to be framed as the only solution, and they make a problem, wait for the reaction, and brand that solution as the only real solution is. But what's going to happen is it's going to
Someone has a feedback. I'm going to mute you guys.
Feedback loop. What's going to happen is they're just going to instigate, an attack on our soil. They're going to say that, what you're doing is you continually are doing war crimes and causing turmoil in the world. And someone's going to be the tough guy and stand up, and it's going to cause even more destruction, and we're all going to suffer from it. And it's exactly what they want.
Well, that's what you have with the degradation of current world order. When the current world order ends up dying, then we have a lot of feedback coming from you.
Yeah, it's all just a distraction. So, anyways, I'm watching a football game. I'm watching Montana State versus Illinois State, which is the finals here.
Cool,
so that's what I'm into. But
I'm gonna have Big T jump in.
just wanted to be able to say that, and I hope that we're all talking about Venezuela, whether it was good or bad. I think Maduro was an evil dude, and you can argue whether it was good or bad till your face gets blue, but it's all a distraction. It's all to get their
it's not a
agenda
distraction. There's strategies and there's plans to take control of various industries and various countries. So I think you're belittling it by saying it's distractions.
Could be, but that's what I believe.
All right, thanks for joining. Appreciate you, TW. I had to mute him. Big T, you've been here for a while. Do you have something that you want to jump in with?
Yeah, I do. And I want to say that I've been around a long time, and I've seen how governments work. And if they're saying oil, they're saying drugs, that's what they're wanting you to look at. Okay? There is a bigger picture here, and everybody knows it. I think it comes down to a lot of what you just said, currency. And I think a lot of it comes down to military protection, because I think it's China and Russia that were wanting to have a good relationship with Venezuela. You cannot let, just like you said, our military is not going to let Russia get in there with anything. Well, they were very close. There's already reports saying that our intelligence has seen what they believe is weapons that could reach the United States from there, that Russia's putting in there. And
But
since
see,
that's
the problem with
happened,
that is the problem that doesn't hold sense is that you could have just said that, and then everyone would have been on your side. The entire American public and the international, the UN, we would have had more justification to do it. So it's actually something more nefarious than that. Yes, it has to do it. It's more economic than it is militarily, because our military would have never let them get a strong foothold in the in our hemisphere, in the American hemisphere. So, and if they were smart, they would have just used that to say that, that would have been the better cover story instead of saying it's drugs, right? D-Rugs was a ridiculous cover story that made no sense. Oil, obviously, but Trump talked a lot about oil during his press conference. But like I mentioned earlier, the American oil companies are not coming in to reinvest to produce more oil out of Venezuela. It's not going to happen.
will. They will. You're looking at a short-term matter. No, they're not going over there this year or next year. They will invest back into Venezuela if they can.
They will only invest. Well, they'll only invest when it's going to make them money. If they invest now, they lose their investment and they reduce the price of oil, and it ends up cannibalizing.
Exactly. Like I say, big oil is going. They look 10 years down the road. They ain't looking at what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day. They're looking at what's going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. It's a bonus for the oil companies. They're happy that if they actually need it someday, it's great. But the U.S. government is looking at it from petrodollars to make sure that oil is being paid for in dollars, and it ends up not being paid for in bricks.
And I do not
They want to
believe
keep it
that
from developing.
we're going to go in there and control their country. I believe they want them to work this out to where we can have some kind of cooperation, I guess you would say, with that type of government. I don't think they're trying to make them part of the United States or be like the United States. I think they just want to be able to have some kind of relationship. Okay, you couldn't have a relationship with a guy who was a drug dealer. That's basically what he was. Okay, and anybody can argue that all they want, but it's the facts.
There wasn't a lot of drugs. He was a lot of things, but there weren't a lot of drugs being transported through Venezuela.
That's ridiculous. And we know that even from the DEA. No, the destabilization is the reason, right? Like we were talking before about, you're right, that there's not that much oil going out of Venezuela. There's not that much oil going out of Venezuela to China. That's true. But there's a lot of oil in the ground, and there's a lot of investment. There's a lot of Chinese investment into developing the infrastructure in Venezuela. And that's something that the U.S. can't have, right? We can't have development in a lot of these places. The more destabilized it is, the better it is for the U.S. because we want to be the only game in town. We want to be the stable country. We want to be able to pressure these countries, and we don't want more countries becoming like China did. Like China now can call the shots in the world because they were allowed to develop, because they tricked us basically into investing all of our money into there, and so now we can't just do what we did to, like, there's no way we could do to Xi Jinping what we just did to Maduro, right? And the plan is to keep these countries weak on purpose. We want the U.S. to be the hegemon, and Venezuela could become wealthy because of the resources that they have. They could become wealthy if they were allowed to develop, and so there has to be instance to de-develop. And the same thing happened in Nigeria. I mean, we look at USAID funding Boko Haram in Nigeria, because Nigeria would have been a multi-trillion-dollar economy by now if they had a stable economy and a stable society to be able to build up their productive capacity, to be able to get to the point where they're calling the shots in the region. And we don't want that. We don't want any other regional powers. Venezuela used to be the wealthiest country in Latin America. It's not because we destabilized it. That's the sanctions, if the sanctions don't work, and that's what BRICS offers, is a way to get around sanctions, right? Like that's the purpose of BRICS essentially, is not to replace a currency. They're replacing the US dollar with gold. Like that's what's replacing the U.S. dollar. It's not,
that's not
some
happening.
sort of like hypothetical BRICS currency or whatever. It's gold. People are ditching the dollar. They're buying gold instead because gold is a solid asset.
Gold is not a currency.
For reserves. What's up?
Gold's not a currency though.
It's just back.
No, but it's a reserve. It's a reserve of value, right? Like it's replacing the U.S. dollar as a reserve.
Okay. All right. Let's see.
I do got one more point I want to bring up.
Yeah, big T.
And this is going to back to what you said, the way they did it. And I agree 100%. The way it was done was probably not the right way. But what I want to touch on is why. And you know why. It's the political atmosphere we're living in right here in the United States. Trump cannot do anything. It wouldn't matter if he'd have said, "Oh, we've seen Russia bring in these weapons." The Democrats are not going to let Trump do anything. You know that. I know that.
No, if it's actual reality, if it's not based on a lie, and if you actually had reason to go in and it wasn't based on a lie and it was actually based on real drug facts, or if it was really based on military facts and other things, absolutely. The Democrats are not going to say, no, you can't do it. But that's the point. You're providing a cover for Trump. And not for Trump.
Not no cover. It's just the fact that it don't matter what it is, whether it's good or bad, they're going to have something bad for whatever he does. It's just, I've seen it firsthand, and I could care shit about Trump.
He has earned it.
I could care shit about Trump. I could care shit about Biden. I could care shit about any of them. I don't care about these political people. Okay, but
he's earned not to be trusted.
You've got to let the man that's in charge govern. If you do not,
absolutely not.
Biden.
Absolutely not. It's not the executive branch's role in the Constitution to have this much power. You let Congress govern. That's the way the system is supposed to work.
So why have a president then?
He doesn't understand.
Why have a president if Congress is going to govern?
Donald Trump doesn't have the authority to change American policy or to change the American way of life or the way that the government runs to the extent that he is doing. It is not his job. That is Congress's job. It is not the president's job to do this.
Thank you.
It's indefensible.
He's got the power to do it, though. That's what matters.
No, he only has the power. No,
all you want.
He's only subject. The Congress subjugates itself and gives him the power because he's the leader of that party. But it's not
the leader of that party.
Those powers have not been granted to him. But he does, in reality, have more power than the Constitution affords him. That is true.
He in practice he did it, so he had the power to do it.
That's right. That's in reality. That's right. In practice and in reality, absolutely.
That's right.
And people say they didn't announce it to Congress. Hell, he announced it to the whole damn world that he was going to go in there and take him out. He didn't have to announce it to Congress. He told the whole damn
international law. It's like, well, there is no international. Right, like he has the power. This is what matters in the world of geopolitics, especially. What matters is if you have the power to pull something off. Or
exactly. Yes, 100%.
Like that's what fucking matters. The material reality on the ground is what matters, and this is the thing. Like it's
matters though when you have that power and you use it in the proper manner, right?
You shouldn't have in the proper manner.
I'm getting too much feedback from you, Rick, so I'm going to have to just mute you.
I'm getting too much feedback.
All right, Rick, you get whenever I speak, there's constant feedback, so that's the only reason I muted you.
He is echoing. Here's another thing. I believe what they did is legal, and the main reason I believe
you can believe all you want, but it's not legal. Your belief does not make it legal. It is illegal.
100%.
It may 100%. Not, but if you're saying that,
if you believe in do you believe in the rule of law? Simple question. Do you believe in the rule of law?
Do you believe our military just doing it illegal because Trump said
Don't ask a question. Do you believe in the rule of law?
Yeah.
Okay, then it's really that simple. If you break the law, then you shouldn't do it. Case closed. Nothing else to talk about.
Okay.
But Big T, I appreciate your perspective, though.
You're saying that our military is just going around breaking the law because Trump's telling them to.
That's what happened.
Yes, exactly.
You summed it up perfectly, Big T. I appreciate your perspective. I'm going to drop just so I can let some more people come in. Thank you, Big T.
That was perfect.
It's great that you have Cuba highlighted on this because everybody has a million and one reasons that aren't the reason that we did this, and no one's talking about Cuba.
That's right. I just
Because
want
this
to
is
interrupt.
about Cuba.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to interrupt. I say, because Juan said this earlier, and I want to appreciate everyone that's here because it's been a great live. Even if we don't agree with everything, I appreciate everybody's perspective because there's nothing like this is an amazing tool that TikTok affords us outside of the times that they censor us. It's an amazing tool and be able to communicate. So everyone has been up, even though I haven't agreed with everyone's perspective. That's totally cool. But it is pretty cool to be able to do this with everyone. So sorry, go ahead, make democracy and go on.
Yeah, I just think that it's awesome that you have that up there. Everyone and their dog knows the reasons that why this all happened, and nobody's talking about Cuba. And everybody's presuming that they know something about oil or everything else.
Did you watch the UN Unfucking the Republic YouTube channel? Did you happen to watch that?
No, but what is the name of this channel?
Unfucking the Republic. So UNFTR. UN.
No, I have not.
Yeah, I'll put it in the comments. You guys haven't watched it. He's incredibly well spoken. UNFTR Media on YouTube. Check out his video. That's where I was able to, including Mr. Global, who is a global energy expert, and with UNFTR, to combine these two things, you kind of got to the real point of the story, which you're make democracy great, or is that has a lot to do about Cuba.
It's Mark Rubio. He's one of the main people involved in this, and Venezuela has been propping Cuba up, and we've been trying to get at the regime or the government, the revolution. And that's, I think, what they're trying to go for here. I don't know why they can't come out and say it.
Well, you heard Rubio. Juan, you're going to be up just a second. You heard Rubio talk about Cuba during the press conference. And I don't know if I'm going to say this properly, but Rubio does seem highly interested in bringing Cuba back, obviously overturning the regime in Cuba and restoring some greatness to Cuba. And maybe his incentives are even more so. I don't know. But this, he's the Secretary of State. He's in charge of crafting foreign policy. This has everything to do about Cuba, and it has a lot less to do about Venezuela.
Right. And I think that it's more, I think that also too, I think the BRIC stuff is also a player in this.
Yeah, it's a supplemental and
definitely
a bonus.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Oh, yeah. That's all I wanted to say. It's just not anything that anybody else is saying. So
yeah, I would say if you had to rank the things in primary, like why are they doing this? It seems to be because what UNFTR suggested, because of Cuba and because of the petrodollar. That seems to be the two primary goals. The side supplemental benefits are making sure, of course, China and Russia don't have any access to friendly governments in our hemisphere, which, I'm okay with.
It's obvious zero to do about democracy.
Has zero to do about human rights or democracy. That's right.
So you're like a cold warrior then, TK?
A what?
So you're totally bought in on the Cold War then, TK, is what you're saying. You said you're all right with the idea that like China shouldn't be able to cut deals with Latin American countries.
No, not cut deals. No, I'm in a sense that when there's an enemy power that's growing, that's a direct threat to the current world order. Yeah, I'm saying you need to make sure that you prevent that from happening because they're not a democracy.
It's an existential threat to our country, whether you want to admit it or not. It is an existential threat, and China's not doing this out of like what China's doing.
China's not a threat to the world order, though.
No, they are.
China's more of a benefit.
Hold on,
China
they are.
wants to keep the current world order.
What China's doing
more so than any.
No, Rick.
What China's doing is it's called debt. God damn it, I can't remember the term. It's the way that they're getting the other countries in debt, and it's predatory, and it's a form of colonialization.
Really?
Yes, absolutely.
Who's invaded more countries has China invaded more countries?
No, I just told you it is a
There's
form.
never been any evidence of that.
Okay, I'm not
What?
going to argue. I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah. You don't want to go there.
There's
Okay.
no debt trap.
Oh,
There's no debt
okay.
trap.
The Belt and
Okay.
Road
It's not a thing.
Initiative is not a
Even,
debt.
even the
so.
Atlantic,
If
NATO's
you say
number
so.
one publication says that the debt trap is a myth. They
What?
had to list a retraction, like the debt trap myth. No,
It's not a myth. It's what they do with
Even
resources.
the Atlantic had to admit this. The fucking Atlantic, which is like NATO's number one publication, right? Is like the Atlanticism.
NATO has nothing to do
They
with
had
China.
to print a retraction basically saying like the debt
That's
trap
not
is a
true.
myth because when countries can't pay it back, China forgives the debt. China forgave like $1 trillion in debt in Africa already. Like this idea that like they're trapping countries is nonsense.
Listen to
that's
Rick.
how
He
they're
knows.
getting their
He knows what he's
resources.
talking about.
No, it's about soft
how they're
power, though.
taking
When
the
you no,
resources.
this is also
Name
about
a single country where China has used the debt to influence their politics.
But you guys are all
When
missing the
has that
point.
happened?
Africa.
You're all missing the point.
what's the point, Juan?
Well, American imperialism. Look at the history. Look at the facts. How many years do we have of American imperialism trying to start wars
They
all over the
traded
world?
the resources. They traded infrastructure for resources. That's a trade. That's like how commerce works.
No. I thought we were talking about taking over the world. Is that what we're talking about? Like, you mentioned China wants to dominate the Western Hemisphere. Well, it's globally they want to expand, right? Just like everybody else, but they're doing it within their business structure because they've been allowed. They brought in American corporations into their system, and now. But look at the wars all over the world. Who's starting wars now? Is it China starting wars, or who's starting? I'm curious. Who's starting the wars
The
all
only
over the
reason
world?
China doesn't
Is it-
start wars is because they're basically prevented from doing so. They will start wars if they get large enough and powerful enough, because democracies, free countries with democracy, don't technically often go to war unless for defensive reasons. Now, the United States is a little bit different because it's done things, right? But generally speaking, peaceful nations don't want to go to war. Unpeaceful governments like China, who have proclaimed they want to expand their empire and want to take Taiwan, that's going to happen. If the current world order ceases to exist with the European allies in the United States, they will expand.
Okay, but I'm asking you a question. Who's expanded their territory? The Western.
The longest period of peace in the world, in world history, TK. The longest. The longest period of peace in world history is 500 years of trade in the Indian Ocean with China and India.
Okay, what years? And Juan, we're having a problem with Rick's
I'm sorry,
feed.
there's a delay.
Rick's
I'm listening. No, but you
the
can't
longest
convince
period
me.
of peace in world history is a 500-year peace with trade between East Africa, India, and China. That is like the longest period of from about 500 or about 800 to about 1300 AD.
Okay, so what's your point, though, Rick?
No, and this is the thing, like China benefits from peace. And the reason the US is destabilizing countries is because China is winning in trade. They don't need to do wars to have influence in the world because they're winning in trade. Why would they start a war?
They need
what
resources.
benefit would that have to them?
That was my point.
Weapons contractors, which is what the
Only
United
as it
States
suits
is.
their
You look
needs
at what the
currently.
United States manufactures, it's about the only thing left in our industry is manufacturing weapons. That's the reason that the U.S. continues to go to war.
Thank you.
All right, so Juan, what was your question before about who goes to war, who's expanding? What are you
They
talking
don't,
about?
though.
Well, look
What
at the
resources
history
do they
of.
need? They have most.
Hold
of
on,
the
Rick.
resources they
Rick, you got too much of a delay, so we're having. I think you're not just able to keep up with the conversation. Juan, so go ahead. Who's
No,
who
we were talking about American imperialism. Is there any question about how American military bases all over the world are trying to like dominate?
What are you talking about? Trying to dominate?
Well,
When has
how many military bases
America
are all over the-
expanded? When has America expanded? How are we in
What
the
are you
last
talking about?
100 years? How has there been American imperialism?
Well, look at Iraq. Look at Afghanistan.
Those are not
Look at
imperialistic.
Iran.
Those are not. What are you talking about? Iraq and Iran. Iraq belongs to the Iraqi people.
Okay, so
we don't control that country. We
so-
didn't expand to them.
So we don't have bases. We don't have bases in Iraq, Saudi Arabia.
We have 700 bases around the world. I don't understand what your point.
That's not expanding.
No, it's having a base to ensure there's free trade around the world and to try and keep the world a rules-based world order. You're conflicting the two things.
What happened in 9/11? How did 9/11 happen?
We had attacked and we went into Afghanistan. What's your point?
Why were we attacked? Why were we attacked?
Which aspect are you going to go? Where are you going with this?
No. Listen.
Try and make your point. America is not an imperialistic nation over the past 100 years up until last week.
Oh my God! Now you're completely disillusioned.
No,
what
you are conflicting the difference between having military bases and promoting free trade. And
listen to me. Just take 1 second. Okay. In the Middle East, religion is really huge. Muslim religion is really huge in the Middle East. Do you know that? Okay. Do you know that if there's foreign intervention in military bases in Saudi Arabia, you don't think that's going to stir up some trouble?
Saudi Arabia wants us there.
Yeah, of course they do.
Yeah, to keep.
Why do you think?
To make sure Iran doesn't attack
because it's because the money. What are you talking about, bro? Listen,
what are you
I thought you had a little bit of
Arabia has relationships just like the UAE and United Arab Emirates and Qatar because they don't want to be attacked.
Yeah, of course, because they're all American.
They're
all American bought.
No,
dude,
you can make the argument.
Where have you been? Are you listening to Fox News?
They have the money, not us. It's the other way around.
What are you talking about? Are you? They have oil.
Yeah, they don't need our money.
So what do you think? Who needs the oil? Who needs the oil?
They need our
protection. The whole world, China.
Yeah,
China needs it.
America needs the oil. So why did they go in
America
Iraq?
doesn't need the oil. America can be completely
self-sufficient.
self-sufficient.
Oh my God, you guys! Oh my God! How many administrations?
America is the only.
How many American administrations?
Hold on. I'll let you speak. Let's bring the temperature down. Listen, the United States of America is the only country relative that has all the resources it needs in almost every aspect, except a few things, whether it's agriculture, whether it's oil, anything else. America is the only largest country in the world that could be completely self-sufficient if it wants to be. It doesn't need Saudi Arabia oil like it used to need.
Then why are they going into the Middle East and starting wars?
Who's starting wars?
They just bombed Iran. They just bombed Iran.
Yeah,
what are you talking about?
That's easy to explain. When did they bomb Iran? You mean a few months ago?
Explain.
Talk about that one.
Explain it to me. Why?
Because the Israeli government and the Iranian government are mortal enemies of each other, and they don't want Iran to get nuclear weapons because they promised.
Dude, you're brainwashed. You're brainwashed. Jesus. I need to leave this. You're brainwashed, bro.
Okay.
You're Israeli propaganda. Israeli propaganda, bro.
What are you talking about?
You're gonna go there?
Equally, I'm not Israeli propaganda.
Are you Israeli? Are you pro? Like Mossad?
Is Iran?
Are you Mossad?
Is Iran an enemy of Israel, and vice versa?
But what does Israel have to do with America?
Where are you living? Do you know how much influence the Israeli government has in the United States Congress?
Dude, are you America first or are you Israeli first? What are you talking about?
I don't know how.
Are you Israeli
I don't
first?
know how you're being so confused to actually think I'm defending Israel here. I am not.
Yeah, well, you just defended Israel. You just said we're going to defend Israel.
You were very lucid earlier. I don't know how you're misinterpreting this conversation.
Bro, I don't know where you're from. Where are you from,
let's
bro?
Make democracy. See if maybe we'll have an intermediary here. What Can you?
No, where you from? Where you from?
No, I
No, where
think
you
this
from?
guy's too unhinged to have a conversation with at this point.
Yeah. No, it's facts. It's facts.
I'm
bro.
an American, dude.
I'm talking
I'm from
facts.
the United States.
Okay, where in America? Where in
Don't
America?
worry about that. I don't dox myself and give out any
Bro, are you in
information.
Texas? Are you in Texas? Are you oil guy?
You think I'm a Republican? That's
Bro,
funny.
I'm out of here, bro.
See you
I
later.
can't talk to these idiots.
You need
I
to
can't
pay
talk to these
attention to my
idiots.
channel a little bit more
Yeah.
often.
Wake up.
See you,
Wake
man.
up, bro. Wake up.
He was very lucid before, but all of a sudden he's gone off the reservation.
Wow.
Did I misinterpret? Did I misspeak? How did anyone come away from that thinking that I was pro-Israel?
I mean, people throw their traumas at everyone else. That's how I take that.
That was odd because he was making some great points earlier, and then now all of a sudden he thinks I'm an Israeli apologist. You've been on my channel a lot. You know I don't defend Israel.
Yeah, I too. I'm not. What they did in this Venezuela thing, it was not done right at all. But I'm not posing that it was entirely a bad idea.
Right. That's
like
exactly
I think
my
going
stance.
in. Yeah, I think going in and doing it was irresponsible. But I think that they should be more out front about why they did it. And I think on its face, like Donald Trump, just because he does something doesn't mean that it's inherently bad. Saying that, I can't think of anything that he's done good. But, it doesn't mean that the people behind the scenes aren't doing something for a good reason.
Yeah, I'm happy for the Venezuelans that they have hope, that they think something good is going to come out of this. And maybe there is. I hope there is. But to believe that there is any, the goal here was actually to help the Venezuelan people is absurd.
Right.
Right.
And I'm really not optimistic for them. I don't see how this is going to benefit them at all. I don't think the United States cares about Venezuela in any way, shape, or form, or Cuba.
So maybe you can help me with this one. Rick says, I got a couple of new guests in here, but Rick says, TK yaps about rules-based world order, but doesn't give a fuck about Venezuelan sovereignty. How do I not give a fuck about Venezuelan sovereignty? I don't know how you get that thought, the words that are coming out of my mouth, Rick, that I am suggesting the United States, it was an illegal act to go into Venezuela. So I don't know where you're getting that. Anyway, we have a few new guests. Wada, Nick, Russ, welcome.
How you doing?
Good. You want to go first?
Sure. I think the main reason, honestly, oil, I'm sure, you can say that up front. But I think it's because of the ties that you've seen from Russia and China, specifically with the oil they've had and how they kind of blocked out the United States from that oil reserve. They're the biggest oil reserve in the country, on Earth, I think. So I think it was, honestly, I do think it was the Monroe Doctrine kind of thinking of where, as I know you said that America's not an imperialist country. I think they're kind of a soft imperialist country where they're not the classical like imperial Japan, right? They go take over countries. But they do have that. I know they have bases everywhere. And it's the idea of Japan wants us to be there, right? I agree with that. But they're kind of pressured to want that because they don't have a choice. It's kind of constrained with how geopolitics is in the region with China and stuff like that.
It's not really by choice. It is by choice, but if they didn't want the United States, they would have much more threats to worry about.
Right. Yes. I agree. So I guess it's kind of I would consider it more of a neo-imperialism versus kind of the more classical thought of like just a country spreading its power, its borders over everyone. It's more of a soft imperialism.
I understand your perspective, soft imperialism. It makes sense, but I don't think it's accurate just because imperialism would imply that we're taking over other countries, and we don't do that. Now, we support other countries, and we do have bases in order to keep police forcing essentially world trade. That we do.
Right. Yeah.
And we use it as leverage and as a threat that if anyone tries to be an imperialistic nation, anybody else, including us, then we actually are able to subdue that. And it actually works. It's not flawless. It comes with problems. It's like having a police officer that doesn't know the law sometimes and oversteps their bounds and arrests someone based on nothing. It's almost the same thing as an individual police officer who doesn't know the proper rules. But that's the United States. And if any power has to do it, whoever the global power is, it's always going to be in that role. So if the United States were to diminish, Russia, China, somebody else is going to fill that vacuum, right? And then you just have to ask the question, are those countries acting on more of a rules-based world order or based on law or based on some sort of values? And do you trust them in a non-democratic nation? Do you trust whoever is in power at that moment to be more decent or more humane than the United States, which is supposed to operate as a constitutional republic?
I actually completely agree. I think we are the global police force. And I think as unfortunate, as an American, you can be like, oh, we're spending our money on other people that aren't Americans, blah, blah, blah. But I think, unfortunately, the scenario is that if we were to step down from that role, we would become kind of more of like an internal country, and you give up those bases, whatever, and you let China take the lead. I mean, I don't think there's really many people in this world that think China would be a more decent police force, as we're kind of talking about, as the United States.
Now, something you need to think about when the people talk about when we are policed in the world, it costs us so much money. The fact is, it's hard to quantify at times, but the amount we get in return in soft power, in access to minerals and relationships, because we're supposed to have values, right? The benefits far outweigh the costs. And the United States, and the United States being generous with its money only makes us more powerful. Where people look at it as it's a bad investment, it's a fucking unbelievably smart investment. And most Americans don't, they just see the burden and the $1 trillion military cost, and they don't understand how
that's keeping us in power.
Right. How that keeps us in power and wealthy at the same time.
Absolutely.
We're not doing for other countries. The other countries are doing for us. That's why we're a superpower. That's what I try to explain to people. It's not that we're doing things for other countries. They're doing everything for us. We're the ones that have profited from it.
That's right.
They're not profiting from us.
Yeah, we're not doing it out of the kindness of our heart.
No.
Yeah, but we're the ones that are gaining from it, not them.
Yeah, I mean, that base in Okinawa, I mean, it helps Japan, but it helps us keep China in check, right? That's that wall you think of, that line.
It's made us the superpower.
Yeah.
We're in control of the world for the most part because the countries have put us there. Mm-hmm. It's not that we're doing for them. They've put us in this place of privilege.
Right. And our geography puts us in this place of privilege. Our literal physical place in the world and the resources we have is the reason we're in this place. If we were a nefarious country with no values and not a democracy, we would still be in this place.
Yeah.
Just we wouldn't be as generous.
This whole imperial thing, I just want to push back a little bit. I'm very concerned. Now, I'm not saying they didn't do a good thing or a bad thing with Venezuela, but it's very concerning when the president's top aide's wife is putting pictures of Greenland up and saying, you're next. And they're threatening Greenland and Colombia and Mexico and all of these other Colombia. Like, this is very fucking concerning.
Yeah, we can stand corrected on that.
Absolutely.
We're acting just like China. We're saying we're going to do something, but we're not doing it yet. And people are supposed to believe, well, it's just talk. It's just bluster. It's not.
Yeah. And I think that we are trying to bring back 18th century imperialism. I think that Donald Trump's trying to break the world order to allow that to happen.
Well, he's transactional. It has to. He has to. It's the only way he knows. Because he doesn't operate under a value system like FDR put into place with Churchill. FDR and Churchill put a world order into place that was based on a rules-based value system. Trump doesn't understand that. So of course it's going to go away, whether he wants to or not, because he doesn't actually understand. He literally doesn't understand what values are, what character is. These are foreign concepts to him. And I don't mean that to be demeaning to him. He literally doesn't understand what those principles are. He just understands what a deal is and how to get something out of someone else and trade something for something. That's it. His little pea brain doesn't have, he was never taught as a young man by his family, or he was a sociopath or a psychopath to begin with, and he doesn't have those traits. And that means he can't even understand what they are.
And let's be fair, Donald Trump's not doing this.
That's true.
He's not doing any of this. Everybody's attributing this to Trump, but he's just the face of it. This has all been planned before Trump even thought about politics.
Well, this is it right here, right? So behind me now, you have all the groups. I'm not going to talk about it today, but these are all the groups that are controlling America and using Trump to get their way.
Right.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
None of this is Trump's plan. None of it is.
Right. None of it's Trump's plan. He's just a puppet.
Yeah.
As long
the
as
donors
he's
are the
enriching
ones
himself
pulling the strings.
Yeah, that's right.
Hey, unfortunately, I had a weird thought. Not a weird thought. I just had a thought, and it was somebody told me a long time ago, multiple times. They said that. Do you know what trust is? Trust is when you have so much dirt on the other person that you know that they're going to stay in line and keep their mouth shut. That's trust. That's the definition of trust. And that got me to thinking, when they say that the e-files are Israeli intelligence thing, that's not true. If our intelligence would have stopped that, our counter intel would have not have let that happen. We're not going to let some other country, compromise our congressmen, businessmen. We're not going to do that.
In theory, yes, but you have to, if you listen to Hugh Sykes,
I don't know about that.
I don't know if this is true or not, but if you listen to former CIA operatives, former CIA officials have said that the United States CIA is barred under all circumstances for spying on Israel. So it is feasible that this was a one-way street.
Well, what I'm posing is, I think that it's far more likely that this was a United States intelligence operation.
Yeah.
You think they were getting dirt on their own politicians?
I think that it's not. It's everyone. The reason that they're keeping it so quiet is because they don't want to come out and tell the world, "Hey, we were okay with doing this for intelligence." Because I think that it's much more likely it was a United States intelligence. And I'm just going to pose. This is my thinking. It's from whatever purposes. I'm not telling you how things are. I'm telling you my opinion. I think that's why Donald Trump's in the position he's in, because they trust him. That's my 2 cents.
Oh, because he has dirt. Okay, I understand that. I don't believe that's the definition of trust. Yeah. It is to certain people. I understand that, but that's not the definition of trust.
No, I get what you're saying, but
yeah. All right, we got a couple.
I'm not
we got a couple new people here. So Nick, you can stay on as well if you have anything to say. Jump in. But we got Russ here as well. Russ, are you with us? Or proper?
Hi. I'm not from the States, and all of this I feel is just distraction from the EP files. And if you had taken out the EP files, I mean, this guy would be like impeached next week or February.
I think you're giving them too much credit. I think this is just a distraction. There's clearly some geopolitical strategy here. It's not Trump's geopolitical strategy. It's definitely Rubio's. But I understand it as a bonus, it may be a distraction from the e-files, but it's clearly not the intention.
It is distraction.
Since you mentioned Rubio, I was seeing some videos, and I was just hoping someone could verify. They said the way Rubio was behaving on stage with the nose twitching and rubbing his nose and all that, like he was on the magic white dust.
He did look a little, I don't know what the word, anxious, or almost like he was going to be exposed somehow, but then he almost exposed himself by talking about Cuba and Mexico. So I did notice that he seemed a little uncomfortable.
But he was touching his nose and it was twitching a lot. Like that's what the lots of videos were talking about.
Yeah, well, let's not go down that realm. That's all pure speculation.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, now, talking as someone in a region where we had lots of one of those 700 plus bases. Please understand that it's a mutual agreement, and when the government shut down, the Germans themselves were feeding American soldiers. Germans were feeding American soldiers. I cannot say about the Asian bases because the Asian bases are quite well stocked up. But the fact is that it's a mutual beneficial agreement. The fact is that it transformed from that imperialistic British Empire system to this back, I don't know, I would say back in the 1990s, 2000, where everybody was trading fine. You bring China into this global system. The fact that China and other countries could have been outside of that global trading system meant they could have went more BRICS earlier. The fact that everybody went into this global trading system only benefited the US dollar. None of these actions in the last, has it just been 1 year? In the last 1 year has not been beneficial to the USA. What it has done is alarm all the ambassadors, and they are like running around and trying to sign new deals when they could have been just holidaying at the Maldives. Basically, it's just creating a lot of work for everyone to sign new contracts with each other without the USA.
Yeah, but
I actually kind of think that's a good thing. I think I think honestly, gone are the days that Europe just relies on blankly on the United States, and I think you're starting to see this repetitiveness in history where that kind of 50 or 70 years between the Franco-Prussian War to World War I of you see countries start militarizing and start kind of building up, consolidating power. And I think there was a period of peace that then led into that. I think we've had that period of peace the past 30 or 40 years, and you see countries like Japan and South Korea and Germany start mobilizing a little bit. I'm not here saying, we're having another great war, but I do think you see some similarities in that of where countries are going to start militarizing themselves because they don't have as much faith in other allies, because other allies are starting to act more in their interest than they have in the past.
Well, they have to. Like you said, it's just because they're losing trust. And that is scary.
Yes.
To have Europe, they should rely on us. It's the greatest time is when they did rely on us and they didn't need to militarize. Whether you agree that they were only spending 1% of their GDP on military or not, whether it didn't cost us any additional money just because they didn't spend a percentage of their GDP on their military. That doesn't cost us a cent extra. However, by them militarizing more and more, if that continues because they're losing trust in the United States, the likelihood of a conflict arising in the future that's broader and more, that turns Europe into a fire pit again, becomes more likely. So I think they should absolutely rely on us. It would have been the perfect way, but America, and because of the influence in our political system, that it's not a government for the people, by the people anymore, meaning it's not functioning that way, is that our government is being taken over and influenced by so many nefarious forces, religious groups, tech billionaires, foreign governments, and so forth, is what's leading to this. That's what's leading to this destabilization of the current world order, is because the representatives don't represent the people anymore. If we just continued with the same foreign policy that every president has adhered to since FDR, and we didn't change things with using tariffs as a trade, as a leveraging tool, as a weapon for economy, if we just stayed with it, the entire economic system of global free trade and globalism has not just been beneficial to all of us in America, has been beneficial to China, has been beneficial to all of Eastern Europe, to Australia, to Japan, like the amount of wealth. So it's not just benefited us, it's benefited the entire rules-based world order, including those adversaries that don't really want us to have this hegemony on the entire system.
Now, let me ask you this, because this is something I've kind of kicked around, this idea. And I kicked around this idea, honestly, like a couple years ago before, I guess, a lot of this stuff kind of came into place. But the NATO agreement, with, I know you talked about the 1% of, GDP, whatever. Now America, obviously it's not coming from America money wise, but obviously we are at this point, like, they're protectors, Europe's protectors,
That was our promise,
whatever.
to protect Europe in the future.
Yes. So what would you say about doing something to where it's almost like, if you don't want to spend the money on the military, that's fine, but you have to pay us for our protection, kind of thing?
That's transactional. We get paid
Yes.
more by using a value system. It ends up paying ourselves back more. It's just not, it's harder to measure it because it's not transactional. Transactional relationships are not based on anything other than those transactions. Like, value system is what keeps things peaceful. You're always still having to argue diplomatically on what the free trade or proper trade looks like. But transactional relationships based on military. Listen, we're going to spend $1 trillion on our military, no matter whether we had bases in Europe or not, or whether they're spending 5% on their military or just 1%. Our budget has not changed depending on what they spend.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I do think at some point you're kind of looking at it, and I know you talked about how, like, I mean, America should do stuff in America's interest. I know we're the global police and all that, but at some point it does become kind of the idea of we're being used a little bit by Europe, where they're not spending money because they know we'll be there.
But we're not.
And I don't want people to militarize like that, but I do think there should be something in place to either actually enforce them spending, what is it, like 5% GDP,
but what
whatever that deal is.
That's actually a problem to begin with, because for 80 years it worked just perfectly fine. It worked fantastically fine. So, like,
I mean, I'm just seeing a way we can actually benefit from that, because right now we're losing that trade.
No, hey, I just want to ask. You said that it would be beneficial. Who's it benefiting? You're saying, how is it benefiting us?
Because we'd be getting paid money by these countries to protect them. We're making money off of that. That would benefit the United States.
I just don't understand how Europe not depending on us is not beneficial to us. I don't understand this whole train of thought.
Us essentially being their military benefits them significantly more than it benefits us. Surface level.
No,
yes, it does.
It's not. Okay.
Absolutely.
I disagree with you. That's fine. I disagree.
Historically speaking, it's not true. You just don't see the benefits. You don't realize the benefits, right? Because when the world devolves or Europe devolves into war, it costs us greatly. That's the whole point. It's an insurance policy.
They can spend their money on their own military or pay us for ours. I think we're doing too much of this out of our own. It's this decency thing, which I get, but I think it's
not a decency thing.
We're too much on the losing end of it.
No, we're not.
Nick, can I explain to you? Can I explain to you how it actually works? Okay.
Absolutely.
Nick. Okay. What happens is actually all the countries, because they need to balance the US dollar and the debts and all that, they are forced to buy American goods. The Harley Davidsons, your alcohol. I'm sorry, those magic juices in bottles that we get from duty-free shops, the Boeing airplanes, all those things. Even we might not enjoy California rates, we might not enjoy it, but we will buy it because we need to balance the trades and all that. You must understand, countries do not operate like your neighborhood gang protection racket. It doesn't work exactly that way. But let's say I put myself in your shoes and say it works that way. We are buying lots of weapons from you guys. So the F-16s, the whatever pew-pews, and they are priced very high. Do you know how much is the F-35? The F-35 is overpriced. The F-35 is so overpriced that even your American government finds it too expensive to operate. It's how the US is making money from the rest of the world. It's your protection racket in a way. That's what you're saying. But instead of having instead of you having to put your lives, all American lives, to protect a foreign country, which I think coming elections, if that really does happen, would make any president lose the next elections. You are just selling the tools. You're just selling the tools. You're not selling boots on the ground.
And also,
Let me hold on one second.
also
Make
Europe
democracy.
is
I just want to say, out of this entire live, whether I said it or anyone else said it, what you just said is the best comment speech of the night.
I agree.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. Do you also, Europe is no longer going to be buying our equipment. They're building their own, and they got a huge amount of money that can't be spent in the United States. They are divorcing themselves from the U.S. Like they're in the process of doing that.
Okay, I mean they don't. I know, like obviously it's a large amount because like to like a human.
But Nick,
GDP wise, these countries aren't spending that much amount of money on our goods.
No.
European countries are.
No, $500 billion. They're not spending on American weapons.
500 billion is not that much.
Half a trillion.
Half a trillion.
500 billion.
It's a lot of money
in terms of United States GDP. What is it?
It's half.
I may be completely wrong. 17 trillion, 32 billion.
$1 trillion is a ton of money.
$500 million
to a human being, yes, but to a total GDP,
to a
that's
country,
not that
it
much.
is a insane amount of money. Yes, it is.
It's not.
Nick,
what is the GDP of the U.S.?
Like 32 trillion. So that's less than what, like 2%.
Nick, don't use GDP. We spend $1 trillion on the U.S. military a year. If there's a $500 billion in income coming from the sale of military, that's 50% of the entire military budget. That's pretty goddamn good.
And you're also assuming, by the way, that every single country in Europe is just going to have this absolute pact not to buy anything from the U.S.
But did you hear
the law that they made? No. It's an attachment to
also
the
my
money
phone's
that
about that, so if I leave,
the money they set aside. The money that they set aside is not allowed to be spent on U.S. weapons. It has to be spent in Europe. It has to. So I don't know how you're looking at this. They cannot spend that money on U.S. weapons.
I mean, what do you mean they can't spend the money? You just said
the money is earmarked for being spent on Europe only, European-made stuff only, because they are divorcing themselves from us. They are not buying our stuff no more. They are making their own factories, and they are going to provide their own weapons. They're not buying ours no more. That is the purpose.
Okay. Is someone snoring? Am I like?
No, you're not making that up. I hear it as well. I think that's. I'm going to bump this person or mute him. So you heard what Property and Pet said. I know your phone's going to die in a second, Nick. This is Americans' protection racket, essentially, right? And now we are losing that amount of revenue because Europe is, like Democracy said, is divorcing itself. Like Saab is building their own jets to provide all their jets to Europe and so forth. So I just think that I appreciate your views. I just think you're looking at it, again, too transactional. What Property and Pets said is these are not transactional relationships that you can measure in just dollars and cents. And if you do so, you're not operating off a value-based system, and you're actually thinking more like a dictator would think and more like Russia's thinking versus how FDR and Churchill set up the current world order. So I'd suggest your points make sense,
Well, I know,
but they don't make sense in terms of actual practicality.
and that's a fair pushback. And I'm not gonna have much longer to be on. I don't think, because I'm at 1%. But I think the value system, you're starting to see it corroding a little bit.
Only because we're allowing
stuff.
it to. Yes, you're right. But only because we're, as a society, the people that vote, we're allowing it to.
How do you mean?
Because we're
if you already said this, I'm sorry.
Say again. Oh, no.
If you already said this, I'm sorry.
No, we're allowing it to because, again, if you're new to probably my channel, I'm always about the amount of corruption, money, and greed that influences our politics. We're not a government for the people, by the people. Our constituents don't represent us. They represent businesses. They represent foreign governments. They represent religious groups.
Absolutely.
Right? We all know that.
Yes.
And it's that corruption that has infiltrated our entire political system that is allowing all of this to happen. Meaning if we just were, and that means we, in a democratic republic, which we are, the ultimate power is supposed to reside within the people. And just like in Venezuela, where they should be rising up to do whatever they can to force a democracy, like someone made the argument earlier, it's the American population's responsibility, and it's done it for 220 years, whether it's the civil rights era or the voting rights era or the Civil War or World War II, World War I. When the population rises up to demand that the government represents the people, that's when things work out well. So your generation, whatever generation you are, I don't know what generation you are, my generation that are alive today have a duty and a responsibility to not only the United States of America, not only to ourselves and to future generations, but to the entire rules-based world order, like Property and Pets is suggesting. He's in favor of it. And we have a responsibility to make sure it stays intact, because our entire government is being taken away from a government for the people, by the people. It's already gone, basically, unless we force it to come back to us. That's why it's our fault as a society, because that's how a democratic republic is supposed to work. Oh, we lost him. His phone died. So anyway, thanks for Nick for being here. I'll just take maybe one more guest, two more guests, and then I'm going to shut it down for the evening. It's time for some food. Thanks, Make Democracy. Did you change your username? Because I don't know what to call you now. I'm going to call you Mima. Is that all right?
I'm calling Make or Democracy. My name's Mike, by the way.
Oh, Mike. Okay, awesome. Let's call you Mike.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So we have Illustrate 2008. How are you?
Tough with the guests today.
A lot of guests today, right?
Yeah, I'm saying it's tough getting them on the panel. A lot of them are not there. Or...
Oh, right. But I had a list that was like 20 long earlier. Jody 97, last guest of the night. So if anyone wants to request up, please don't. I'm going to shut it down soon. Last guest on the panel. I remember the username. You've been here before. I think it's been a while. So welcome back. And Mike, you might be right.
If you're right.
It's because people have been waiting so long. Hey, hi there.
Hi, TK. No, TK, it's me. Jyoti, you can talk anytime. I'll keep my mouth shut. It's my other account was restricted because I showed like a California red or yeah. So that's why I can only use this account to talk to you. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I loved your perspective, being a foreigner with a military base, and your perspectives of I need to remember that protection racket quote. And what was your other quote?
The boots on the ground and elections, because whoever is going to put boots on the ground is going to lose the next elections.
Right. Absolutely.
And I didn't write all that. I was just the words were just coming out of my mouth as I walked in my kitchen.
Well, I don't believe English is your native tongue. So you did a really.
It is.
Oh, it is?
It is my first language.
Okay.
Yes. But I do come with an accent. Yes.
Okay, very good. So I was going to say it was very creative language that you used for someone who I thought it wasn't their native tongue, but since it is your native tongue, sorry, you don't get props for that.
The fact is, I'm sorry. I do hear a lot of these young voices that says that, but they have been around since January, maybe even November. But what I'm very curious is, because I'm sorry, I haven't got seen your panels in a while. Have you been getting young fellas, but they want to run for Senate and Congress, but from all the communications with them, they are not there. Their head is just filled with, I want to run, but they don't have the policies, they don't have the education, they do not have the international, not even the domestic knowledge to even run a state like Michigan.
Yeah, well, here's my thoughts on that. So, by the way, I'm going to answer a question first. RedSec, I'm going to start going online, I think, at 1 p.m. on lives 1 p.m. Eastern time and in the evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to try and come up with a regular schedule twice a day, or at least one of those 2 times is probably the best time to catch me. And if you want to get a reminder, just go to my profile and click on the notify when I go live aspect. So that will help until I become really regular on my lives. But going back to your comment, property and pets, it's the young Generation Z in the United States has been, there's nothing, these are wonderful human beings, but they're products of their environment. And their environment is a social media environment. And that social media environment contains so much, what do they call it? It's the toxic masculinity that's been promoted by various people like Charlie Kirk and Dave, not Dave Shapiro, but Ben Shapiro.
Not Dave.
And Jordan Peterson and even Joe Rogan and
The Tate brothers.
The Tate brothers and Newick Front has perfectly said, like they're just products of what they're listening to and the shit bags that they're listening to, these indecent human beings that are only doing social media to make money, to exploit their minds. These people, these young men, in particular, young men, their minds are being poisoned. I call it poisoned by the not only the crypto bros, but the gaming bros and all the tech bros and the social media bros. It's just this entire ecosystem in the United States of these social media bros that are polluting their minds. And again, there's nothing different about them versus someone who's older. It's just they only hear what they hear, and they don't have access to the wealth of knowledge, or never mind the diversity. If they were traveling around the world, most Americans are very isolated. They don't travel to other countries. They don't understand how foreign policy works. They only understand this utopia thinking that America is the greatest country in the world. And it probably should be, but it's not always acting like it, right? And that's my philosophy or theory on what's happening with young men. They're just being polluted by so many forces that are trying to get them to be divided instead of united.
Can I join?
Yeah.
What I would add to that, maybe a little different position, is I think role models or expectations, the vehicles for them have changed. So with social media, I view it as a vehicle. And the negative aspect of it that I see that stands out the most is the pressure that comes with it. Like you're always watching what others are doing, and then you're trying to emulate or outdo the other person. Whereas in the past, before social media, and I would even go back to 50s, 30s, not all the men that grew up in that time without internet became whole human beings as well. And so they thought that suppressing what you felt made you more of a man, and not being kind and not opening up to your partner, to your kids, talking about things that really matter. And then that gets passed down generation to generation. If you don't have good system in place growing up, and the love and support that you need from your parents, first and foremost, then the outside world can influence you. And most of the time, it influences us negatively. So that's what I would probably say on that topic.
Well said. I
agree. Add to it.
Different sort of perspective, but on the same lines.
Yeah.
Similar.
And so what I love about post 90s, I'm choosing 90s, but it could be 80s, it could be 2000s. There was more of an effort or an intrigue to go to therapy. So people sought therapy to try to figure themselves out. And I think that was a step in the right direction, because becoming self-aware why you are the way you are, and what led to it, is kind of like cleaning the windshield. Now you can see where you're going better, and you can see where where your values stand more and like, you know, what fits you better and whatnot. And then reaching out to people you probably wouldn't normally reach out. So anybody that requests to talk to someone like you, TK, or any other live feed, you know, that's effort, and not everybody's comfortable taking that step. So I commend anyone who does it, you know, and speaks their mind, but also does it in a way where they are vulnerable and are open to dialogue and possibly learning something. And I think in this feed, you know, we've learned a lot just to be, you know, appreciative.
Yeah, the one thing I appreciate those comments because it makes a lot of sense. And the thing that sometimes I get a little heated at times as well, that what I can't stand what happens on a lot of other lives that are just debating MAGA or just debating liberals is that it's all about belittling people, and that prevents people from coming up and having conversations. And it's really at the conversation level is that you can reach people and get people to think differently. And so many lives are trying to just do the same thing that media is doing and social media is doing and all these other groups. They're not really trying to solve any problems. They're actually making things worse.
Yes.
It's kind of like watching those 90s and 2000s like Maury, Jerry Springer. You know, the more tension, the more insults, the more negative energy, the more friction, the more people stay tuned. So it's almost like entertainment, right, and less about substance. And only when a host is very perceptive of that and challenges person and keeps them from pivoting, that's when you can really challenge people's core values and beliefs. And I've seen it a few times. People get very uncomfortable, but they finally admit like where they really stand. But one thing I do want to say, and the reason why I joined this live feed, is the real or likely agenda behind what's happening in Venezuela. So ever since this thing had happened, I've been just like researching, watching YouTubes, reading articles, trying to figure out this whole thing. And it's so much more nuanced. But I think it comes down to maybe 2 or 3 key things. And that's what I wanted to get you or the other guests on the panel and even people on the comment sections perspective on.
Yeah,
from my discovery.
Yeah, are you going to go
from my discovery?
What are the 2 things? What
yes.
are the 2 primary things that you think? Because it sounds like you haven't been here the entire time, which is obviously a long time.
No, I joined later on. The thing that I've come up with is oil, but why oil? Just to briefly talk about it. There's only a handful of countries that have this type of oil that Venezuela has. What type of oil does Venezuela have? Heavy crude. Why is heavy crude important for the United States? Because most of the refineries, or maybe all of the refineries, when oil was discovered in the U.S., were built for heavy crude. And only until the mid-2000s, through fracking, did we find lighter oil, which is more for like gasoline and stuff like that. The second reason, tying it to the heavy crude oil, is this is the part that I need to still figure out and understand how it works. It's to get the U.S. dollar, petrodollar thing keep going. I don't know the history of it. And
I can explain that really quick. It's super easy.
Go ahead.
So every country sells their oil for U.S. dollars. So
correct.
They have oil, they sell the oil. Now they have a bunch of U.S. dollars. They don't put those U.S. dollars in the bank. They buy U.S. bonds with those dollars. So after they buy those bonds are what allow your government to operate at with a low interest rate on their debts. That's the reason we have a $38 trillion debt, and we have serviceable rates on them. So when they quit doing that, when they quit buying our bonds with their oil money, then no longer will we have the interest rates that will support our debt, and our whole economy will collapse. It is like Armageddon. That's the quick sum up.
See, I'm almost quite there, but I'm not there yet. Is it still feasible, or is it still possible for these countries that have been doing the petrodollar thing, buying oil with dollars, if they choose to use other currencies, can they still buy the bonds?
Would
They
they,
won't.
or would they be?
They won't.
Why wouldn't they? Break that down for
Because
me.
they're gonna spend those and buy bonds from those countries, and those countries are gonna benefit from having their dollar be on, from it being on that. It's just they're not gonna be spending their money here. That's the reason that they're moving away from us, is because they don't want to support the United States. They want to get they want to get the world off the United States so that it brings us down. It's what China and Russia have done to get around sanctions. That's what the whole BRICS thing is about.
Right. And Jody, let me go.
What is this BRICS things that I keep? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
let me jump in. So, because you're going down the same path that most of us have gone down already. I think I'm just a little farther along on some of the research because it just came out in the past 48 hours between Mr. Global, who is on TikTok and he's a world energy expert, and also UNFTR. It's called Unfucking the Republic. UNFTR Media did a great thing about what's really happening. So I just wanted to talk about your thoughts on oil, on why you think this is about oil, because we all thought it was about oil, and it had to be about oil because most things are when it comes to these types of geopolitical things. However, when the U.S. oil companies have no interest in drilling more oil out of the ground in Venezuela because they have already found a supplemental, an alternative source. Instead, when they were pushed out of Venezuela in 2000, they found over the last 10 years, they've moved to Canada. They have heavy crude is also in the deep, heavy, sludgy crude. Canada has the same crude, so is the Gulf of Mexico. And they've replaced what they would have been getting out of Venezuela in the past, and they now get it from Canada. And all the U.S. refineries that refine heavy crude are already operating at basically max capacity. So there is no need for the U.S. oil companies to extract more oil because the refineries are operating at full capacity. They have more than enough oil than they need to. So when Trump says they're going to go into Venezuela and invest, they will not invest. Even if they tell Trump they will, they won't, because it will end up cannibalizing their investment. They spent $500 billion in Canada to invest in that infrastructure to get the oil out of the ground. So that's why it never made sense to me that why is this about oil? Because the oil companies are no longer promoting that they need this oil. Now, maybe they'll want it in 10 or 20 years from now, but they're not going to invest in the infrastructure to get the oil out of the ground. So it's not about oil per se. Oil plays a role here. It's more about Marco Rubio has been promoting regime change, not in Venezuela, but in Cuba. So Venezuela and Cuba are the largest two trading partners in anti-American strategy, or an anti-American trading relationship between the two. Venezuela sends oil to Cuba, and Cuba sends people to Venezuela, doctors, nurses, technologists, so forth. Tens of thousands of people from Cuba. That's why 34 of them were killed in the raid. I think it was 34 were killed in the raid because there's a lot of Cuban forces in Venezuela. And I think there may have been even security forces protecting the president. I'm not sure about that. Was that right?
They were.
They were?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
He had just, and ironically, he just switched them out prior, like for the Cuban security. It was a new development. Yeah.
So what this is really, what it seems to be, Jody, is that Marco Rubio is a Cuban American. His parents are from Cuba. They wanted to return to Cuba in 1956. They came to America in 1956. They wanted to return, but Castro was in power. And like many Cuban Americans that fled Cuba, they want to overturn the regime in Cuba. So the way you do that is, this is a 2-for-1 special. If you remove Maduro, and if you take over the oil exports, and even though they're only 900,000 barrels a day, and if you insert a friendly government in Venezuela, then you will be able to control and constrict the oil flow to Cuba. Now, Mexico also provides gasoline, not oil, to Cuba. And you heard Marco Rubio in the press conference talk about that Mexico has to be talked to next. So Rubio seemingly has a personal agenda along with the Cuban American, most influential Cuban Americans, that they want regime change in Cuba. In order to do that, you cut off the energy supplies in Cuba, you put pressure, more and more pressure on their government, and we don't know yet what else are they going to do? But this seems to be an alignment between 2-for-1 special, where you can overturn the government in Venezuela, get access to the minerals as a side benefit, as also kicking out Russia and China as a side benefit, and also as a major benefit, not only overturning Cuba, is that all those 900,000 barrels of oil now will not ever be threatened to be paid under the BRICS unit currency, and they will always be exported and have to be paid for with petrodollars. So it's between the petrodollars preserving the petrodollar, whatever you want to call it, economic system, and overturning both governments, because both of them are anti-American governments. So does that make sense, or does it sound way conspiratorial to you?
No, it makes sense, and I understand it. Thank you for your explanation on it. I just want a little bit more clarification. Why is Cuba important for the U.S.?
We don't know if it is important to the U.S.
Or maybe for you. Okay, for Rubio for sure, but
it seems that
it's important to him.
Yeah, he's the Secretary of State, and he wants to return his homeland to a thriving country like it once was. It seems like this is about Rubio being the savior of Cuba. And make no mistake about it, that's not conspiratorial when you think, men have done a lot of things based on ego. Does he even want to do something grander? We don't know. But he's not the only one, by the way. Most Cuban Americans want their government to be overthrown so they can return to a more productive, thriving country. So is it important to the United States as a whole? Maybe, but it is certainly important to the Secretary of State.
And I need to point out that Cuba was thriving after Obama, and Donald Trump came in, and his policies devastated Cuba. They are still persisting as a not viable government, but they still are holding power because of Venezuela. And then when I say that the people in Cuba are devastated, they don't have electricity to keep their food cold. They don't have food. They have nothing. When I watch people that are there and they interview people there, they tell you that they are a fifth world country. That, like, I'm getting in tears, like how devastated it is.
Yeah, there's indie travelers. I watch them in that are walking through Cuba, the indie travelers, and it's bad right now.
And they want to destroy it more. They want to cause more harm in trying to flush out their government. And that revolution is tied to Venezuela. That revolution that happened in Cuba is tied to Venezuela. They're tied together. So that's how all this fits.
Could you briefly brief me on the Obama policies that helped, and then what Trump did to kind of reverse, what he did?
Yeah, we opened
for
up
context.
business. We let American businesses go in and travel. And what happened is they opened up casinos, and they opened up resorts, and they opened up all these things, and Donald Trump shut it all down. So they lost.
Do you know
all
why?
their income. What's that?
Do you know why Trump would do that?
Cuban American influence. A lot of Cuban American community doesn't want them to doesn't want the Communist Party to get stronger. They want to weaken it first in order to dismantle it. Obama's policies were good for the Cuban people short term, but maybe not long term. It just depends on how you want to look at it, right? Rubio seems to be taking a position that I want to be able to tear it down in order to build it up later to really restore Cuba to greatness, versus Obama's was like, okay, we're just going to have to settle and let's at least make life better for Cuba, normalize some trade relationships in some degree. But the Cuban American community didn't really want that, because that legitimizes that government and keeps them in power even longer. So the end game changes.
But in a way, like really, is it our right to do that? To devastate?
That's what I want to go to next. That's what I wanted to touch on.
I don't have an answer on that, but that's part of the question. Conversation.
So I'm sure you guys are well aware of this, and America has for decades. I don't know if it's been more than a century.
influenced, how Central American and South American countries operate. We have, I don't know if it happened in all cases, but in most cases, we put guys in charge or in power that were good for America or American interests or businesses, but horrible to the people that lived there.
Yeah.
And that was part of the problem, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Cuba. Fidel Castro, at the time, this is like in the beginning, I guess, the revolution, whenever it happened, he sought that, and any sane, rational person would see that and see it as like a colonial or imperial or like a bad deal situation and want to, make a better future for his country. The part that I'm murky on is like, there's good and bad that I've heard and read about Cuba. And part of the reason why is because it's a closed country or society, so it's hard to like verify information. He does a lot of good things with sending doctors, anywhere. And he even offered, I think, Trump during COVID to send some doctors when we were without the vaccine at the time. So you hear these different stories and it's like, and then you hear about like these Cuban Americans who hate the guy and hate the communism country, but yet, we also have huge business dealings and trade with China, who's not exactly 100% communist. I forget what they're
not a communist country.
Right. But I'm sure America has dealt and done business with communist countries. This is the part where I need to, further educate myself on, and maybe you guys can clarify.
Can I ask why would it be Cuba when their health lifespan is good, their healthcare is free, and they live up to 80 years old, almost the same as Americans. So they are not lacking in healthcare or medical care, and they get it free. So why do you need to liberate them? Do they have guerrillas? Do they have a need for a revolution? Are people inside agitating for a revolution?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they've left. A quarter of their population has just left in the last 10 years.
I would, if you're young, if you are the young and youthful, and if you want to make lots of money and all that, you definitely would leave, just like anyone would leave a village for a big city, bright lights.
Cuba is known to have, obviously, for a long history. I don't know how it is right now today in the last few years, but their healthcare system has been one of the best healthcare systems in the world. However, they're also a very corrupt communist leadership system. It's communist in name only. It's not like pure Marxism and communism where you would think that if everything by the utopia way of thinking, it would be great. So they do have great healthcare, but their people don't feel like their government represents it because it's so corrupted. Economically wise, it's basically a failing system, right? It's a failing system economy wise. So that's why their people want out.
I hear you on that, but if that was so important, then please do it to North Korea, because North Korea is truly corrupt, because the people are eating grass.
They need it. They need the help.
Hold on there. The people are truly eating grass while the leaders are carrying Chanel and having caviar and all that, and is the top leaders. Everyone else is suffering. And if you've seen the videos, it's the model family, the husband and the wife, they don't even know each other. They are just actors because they are good looking and they look healthy. They are put together with a child. It's all a charade, like that movie with Jim Carrey. That is a truly dystopian, corrupt system. Cuba is not. Cuba is going by the traditionalist 1960s, 1970s kind of manifesto by Marx.
Right. Yeah, I'm not arguing that we should be policing any North Korea or Cuba and telling them how to operate their system. I'm not taking that stance whatsoever. I'm just taking the stance for the Cuban community that what I've read, that they want regime change, and Marco Rubio wants regime change. For the exact specific reasons, I can't tell you what they all are, but the United States government is acting on it because of the certain influences from the Cuban American community and from Rubio in particular. It could be just as simple as that he He's been told X by his parents how Castro was such a corrupt dictator, an evil dictator, and that he wants to change it, right? We don't know the details. And someone said, the host, I am lying because it's not a failing economic system, that it's the sanctions. Yeah, I'm sure that has something to do with it, or a lot to do with it. And someone said, we are corrupt. I am certainly not intentionally lying. You may see it a little bit different through a different lens. But Cuba, we're still operating with Cuba in sort of a Cold War lens as well, because they are friendly with governments that are our adversaries. And that's a problem for the United States. And I'm not advocating that we should be doing regime change in Cuba. I'm not supporting that whatsoever. I would like Cuba to be a thriving democracy and economically as well. How do you get there? Is it the Obama way? Is it the Rubio way? I don't know. I just know that whether we invade any country, just like going into Venezuela, is against the law. It's against the Constitution. So I'm always for the rule of law. Anyway.
Right, because now what precedent do you set by doing something like this? Then the other countries are going to be like, okay, if the U.S. can do it, now, if China wants to get into Taiwan,
they're going
they
to.
They can with that same logic.
Absolutely.
Russia, Ukraine, and if the reason was we don't view Maduro as a legitimate leader, then the other world leaders can view their neighbors or people in their vicinity as not legitimate leaders, like Zelensky, or whatever. It's just when we. I'm sorry. One more point. I play basketball, but any sport you play, there are rules. Once rules are broken, the game is not the same anymore. You'll quit. You won't want to quit. You'll complain. That's why rules are there, so that we can fully operate in a good way. I don't know how else to say it. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so that's a great point. If the rules don't always fall your way, in the short term, something might happen. When you act on rules and values, there will be times where things go against you in the short term, but they will always work out for you in the long term. Like having the sport will maintain its credibility and will thrive in the long term, even though you lost a game because of a horrible call.
Right.
That's geopolitics in a nutshell, or that's the rules-based value system in a nutshell. You don't always get your way. You lose a lot. You get a lot of bad calls that go against your way, but you just remain with your values and you always win in the end. It's just simple short-term versus long-term thinking and perspectives.
And let's say if Cuba was so corrupt, I believe I would prefer if it was like a Biden, the normal kind of American administration where you go into another country with lots of checks and balances and Congress and all that, not like this administration that tore down the East Wing without even historical and what's that where that chemical that's in the roofing system, what's that?
Asbestos.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. You would leak asbestos into your own house? It's a numbskull. You need to have brains in your you need worms in your brain. I'm sorry.
That's the difference
to
between
do
when you
that.
act with values and character and morals and when you don't. It's really simple.
So TK, you mentioned that before, something about Trump where, he doesn't have, values, or he doesn't, see things with, perspective that most people see. I think it's something else. I think it's called capacity. Some people do not have the capacity in them to feel or to see things in a different light. With people like Trump, rules only apply to them when it's convenient and they can gain the advantage. I heard the story. I don't know how true it is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is true. When Donald Trump is playing golf with whoever and he passes by your ball, he'll hit your ball further away to take to have more of an advantage.
He does cheat at golf.
Yeah, he's a serial cheater, right?
Cheating, right? Cheating for him is like breathing almost. So here's like a big question, and I don't have the answer. How do you deal with the most powerful person on the planet who doesn't care about rules the way that a normal society, a normal statesman, a normal general or commander would, and still has Congress and the Supreme Court backing him. Not every time, most of the time.
So that's not only a question that none of us can answer. The founding fathers didn't even answer it when they created the Constitution, because they created that check and balance to make sure that Congress had that ultimate control and that ultimate check and balance. But they never could foresee that Congress would subjugate themselves so entirely to the executive branch, even though George Washington, in his farewell address, warned Americans about a leader rising up that would transcend if there was a two-party system. George Washington warned America, if you embrace the party more than the nation, people will be more loyal to the parties than they will to the nation. And then foreign governments will then use that leverage to tear down democracy. He didn't use those exact words in the end there. But even George Washington and all the founding fathers, they thought they put in the right checks and balances. So none of them could predict this, even though George Washington could predict a lot. But they just never thought it would devolve into a full two-party system where the executive branch ends up having or acting with impunity because that check and balance has failed.
Correct.
And that, again,
and I think it's also, go ahead.
Yeah, by the way, I want to mention, because I'm going to just about done to shut down, but I didn't mention this much at all today, but this is where it really comes down to, Jody. I don't know if you've seen this before, but at the end of the day,
I haven't.
There is no other solution that really works here. That I've done the research for years and years, and I know this sounds very ambitious, but I actually think big, ambitious goals are better than piecemeal band-aids, like having a protest to get healthcare or something. Those are all great. You should do that.
Yeah.
But if you truly want to eliminate or bring representation back to the people and weaken both parties, because ultimately, if it's a two-party system, it's always going to be a tribal mentality, right? A winner-takes-all system. So there's basically three things that need to happen. And this is for not just you, but everybody watching, since I haven't done this yet today. If the American population ever wants to restore its freedoms and liberties and get a country that's back representing a government for the people, by the people, as it's supposed to be, you must have a 28th Amendment, which will ban greed and influence, and it makes sure that elections must be publicly funded by individuals, meaning human beings, American citizens, because corporations are not people and money is not speech. So that overturns Citizens United. And it has to be done through a constitutional amendment, because Citizens United will not be overturned by the Supreme Court. So it has to be something that goes outside or above the Supreme Court's sort of purview. And that would be a 28th Amendment. And then, only then, if you could do that, which I know it's such a big lift, but it requires 50 million people. If you can get 50 million people to support MAGA and let Trump act with impunity, my alternative pendulum thought process is, if you can get 50 million people that want to stop arguing about healthcare and immigration and all the things that we've been talking about today, and just want to eliminate the corruption of the religious groups, of the foreign governments, of the tech billionaires, all the scammers, etc., you could do the same thing in reverse that MAGA has done for nefarious reasons, unwittingly they did, but then you can do a 29th Amendment at the same time, and making sure being a politician cannot be a career. Those are the two things. The third thing would need to be ranked choice voting. And that can't be done really on a constitutional amendment, because the states control their elections. But if most states had ranked choice voting, some of them prohibit it right now, then you would weaken both parties, because then you would never be throwing away your vote. It means that you could have independents or third parties run for office, and you could vote for them. But if that person didn't win, you wouldn't be throwing away your vote, because you'd be ranking your votes, and your votes would then be applied to your next choice and to your next choice. And then you get a winner through ranked choice voting. So my always promotion to everybody is, there's a magic formula to make America truly the beacon on the hill again, to truly make it a representative democracy and a constitutional republic again, because it's not functioning that way today. And it's these three things, and it requires 50 million people. And I know it sounds delusional. I know it sounds insane, but I have never heard anyone suggest, without tearing up the Constitution and starting over, which is an absurd notion, that within the confines of the Constitution, to restore our American democracy back to the people, this is the only thing that actually works. Nothing else that I've ever thought of or heard other people talk about can work. So that's my thought, Jody, and thanks for bearing with me on it.
Unfortunately, I'm pessimistic on, America becoming better. The values, the perception, the hatred, the vitriol, how corporations have gotten more and more control, the laws that have been placed, and the privacy rights that we've lost since 9/11. I think the trajectory looks as if it's just going downhill. Maybe it'll still be a superpower, but it won't be a country will recognize or like really enjoy or have like a truly satisfying, peaceful life.
Yeah, I agree.
In that way,
it will be an empire.
I think that it's because of the lack of those 2 amendments. Honestly, I think he's right that would fix it.
This is
I know, I agree. It's just I don't see it happening.
Well, it's binary, right?
I mean, I would love it.
You're right. You're probably right. You're probably right, but it really is very binary. If 50 million or more people woke up and said they wanted to support it, it would happen. And then your pessimism would go away. And if we never get 50 million people together, it will absolutely not happen. And you will be 100% right. My always inspiration or what I try to tell people is, if you don't have to worry about 50 million, you don't have to get to 50 million. You just have to get to 1 million first. And you have to have a little bit of a ripple or a little bit of a wave. And 1 million could turn into 10 million. And once you get 10 million, you'll get to 50 million fast, because that's how political movements, that's how popular movements work. They gain momentum, they gain network effects and so forth. So the number 50 million or more sounds absurd, but there's probably at least 100 million people that would agree with these things and would do it. But how do you reach them? How do you galvanize them?
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Two quick points. One, when I saw No Career Politicians, I was immediately reminded of what Jesse Ventura, the former governor of Minnesota, said. Career politicians, or politicians in general, should wear jackets like NASCAR drivers. That way you can see everyone who sponsors them and where they stand. And two, with the third point that you suggest as an improvement with ranked choice voting, that's actually what we did in New York City to vote for the mayor recently.
Yeah, New York City has it. That's right.
If
you did that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have ranked choice voting.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to share that, because I know you have an audience across the United States and maybe even outside the United States. So just so that they're aware that it is a thing.
It's very effective. Here's the thing, 29th Amendment, this no career politicians is not effective at all unless it's combined with the 28th Amendment. Term limits are proven to be ineffective, and then sometimes even worse if it's not combined with eliminating corruption, because then people don't feel accountable to their constituents if they know they're just going to be out of office at a certain period of time. So there has to be a threat of accountability and criminal activity by accepting money. And then, and only then, when I talk about term limits, it's not like, hey, you just can serve 2 years in Congress and then you're gone. It could be maybe 4 terms, 8 years in Senate, and then you can move to the Senate for 12 years. What it can't be is you join the Senate when you're 30 and you're 90 and you're still in the Senate. Like that, those type of things can't happen.
Yeah.
But what if you're good at it? What if you've made mostly good calls?
That's the consequence of just having it. It's more better. You give up some consequences to it to ensure that, because ultimate power corrupts, right? When people stay in power too long, they always get corrupted. So if there is someone that was brilliant and they didn't get corrupted, it's just that's the process. It's sort of like the game.
They did a good job.
They did a good job. The rules that you don't like in the game they're just the rules, and we deal with them.
350 million people, we could find more people that are good at their job.
I can pick them out. I can pick them out of the DMV. That would be better.
No, I'm saying out of the population of the United States, we could replace those good employees, those good public servants, with new ones. There's not. Right. We have a big supply of them.
It was supposed to be. That's what the founding fathers never imagined being a politician would be a career. It's supposed to be citizen servants, and they would serve in office and go home. Now they'll never go home unless there's no corruption, and unless you're preventing the corruption or policing the corruption about money, because there you have K Street and all the lobbyist groups and so forth. But if those don't exist, you still need lobbyists. You don't need paid lobbyists. You need lobbyists that help educate. So corporate lobbyists that help educate the leaders, but not manipulate the leaders. So there's a difference. Not like all lobbyists. It's mostly paid lobbyists have to be eradicated in the sense of lobbyists influencing and contributing to elections.
Hey, may I ask, how long did your presentation go on the Kennedy?
The depth of JFK Jr. and how the world would be different if JFK wasn't around. I'm going to post it on YouTube. It's probably going to be about a 25-minute video.
Okay, I missed it, and I was really looking forward to it, so I was hoping
I'll let you know. I'll definitely let you know when I post
awesome.
it. I actually started editing it today. And for those of you that are watching, I always talk about JFK Jr., not Senior. If he would have lived and he didn't pass away in 1999 in that plane crash, our entire world would be different today. I did a video on that because if Junior was around, he would have been running for the election most likely in 2008, and he would have replaced Obama, because he would have certainly beat Obama. He would have destroyed McCain. With JFK Jr. living, you wouldn't have had Hillary. You wouldn't have had Obama in the same way. You certainly wouldn't have had MAGA or the Tea Party or Donald Trump or Hillary, like I said, or Kamala. Every day, our lives are dramatically influenced because of JFK. One individual perishing on July 16th, 1999, literally changed our entire world.
You're saying that he would have beat Obama?
There wouldn't have been a necessity for it.
Yeah, he would have.
Oh, you mean maybe Obama wouldn't have been a candidate?
So one of two things would have happened. In 2008, so JFK Jr. would have been 47 in 2008. He already was giving the Democratic National Convention speech, or opening speech, as a 27-year-old. He died when he was 38. He would have been 46 or 47. He most likely would have run for president in 2008 in the primaries against Obama. He would have beat Obama. Was popular, but JFK Jr. was transcendent. He was royalty, and he was just a really good dude. This was a privileged kid from the Kennedy family, but he was a very well-respected human being, not only by Clinton, but by Trump, and everybody loved this guy. He would have mopped up everybody and even would have beat Obama, and that would have delayed Obama's rise for at least another 8 years. And you probably would have been looking at 8 years of Kennedy and then maybe 8 years of Obama. Of course, there's some speculation, but the speculation is not very deep to get to JFK running in 2008, and that would have changed everything because MAGA would have never formed because birtherism would have never happened.
I'll have to check out this JFK Jr. guy. I know it's sad and unfortunate what happened to him, and I feel like the family is cursed, if they get into politics or say anything about it or try to touch it. But, curses are broken sometimes.
Yeah. Well, we're living in a parallel universe.
In a negative way.
Just on
with
Kennedy's...
With RFK.
The young Kennedy that just passed away, RFK is not welcome at her services.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, RFK is not welcome there.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for everybody. Property Pets, you're still here. I appreciate you guys being here. I've been on for 3 hours and 49 minutes. I expected to be on for an hour, so I might have just surpassed that.
Yeah, I really like your content. Thank you.
Thank
TK.
you, Make Democracy. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
You guys have a great evening.
All right.
Invite me next time.
Thanks, Property
Invite me
Pets.
next time. Bye-bye.
So I'm going to leave
Bye-bye.
everybody with the newsroom. So I'm going to leave on a closing. For those of you here, let's listen to the opening scene of the newsroom in 2014. See if this makes...
TK, sorry.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, quick question. You mentioned a YouTube channel that covered the story about the Venezuela-Cuba thing. What was it? Unfucking Real? Something like that.
Unfucking the Republic. So UN, I'll put it in the comments.
Unfucking the Republic.
And
Okay, I forgot to say what... sorry, regarding the Venezuela, remember the KOCH brothers? They are the second biggest private owned company in the whole of the United States. They are refiners and they stand to gain. So finally, their paycheck is in.
Well, the refineries are already working at capacity, so I think they'll be just fine. But anyway, thanks, guys. Thanks for joining. I'll see you next time, Property Pets.
See ya.
See you, Jody. Okay, so to leave on a closing for everybody, thanks everybody for joining. This live was awesome. We had great panels. We had a lot of people here. Please remember to follow and also check out the Citizens Plan to bring representation back to the people. If you go to the link underneath my profile, no matter what platform you're on, and I'm sorry about the IG people. My eyes weren't on IG that much, but I appreciate those of you on IG that were watching. Go to the link underneath my profile. There's a link to download images, and there's a link to all the different social media platforms. And most importantly, to see the plan, to read the plan. It's a 5-minute read. Bring representation, a citizens plan to bring representation back to the people. That'll explain a lot. If you can repost my videos and share them, because I do have a plan that I would love to someday help institute, but it's far away at the moment. But it just takes, like, I'm nobody, you're nobody, but somebody or collectively, we can do anything that we want to. I know it's a big dream, but I don't know what else we can do. There's nothing we can do unless the people rise up and have a popular movement, and it can start on social media. It doesn't require any violence or any of that. It just requires people to unite behind very simple, agreeable things, meaning a 28th Amendment. So with that said, thanks for joining. Now I'm going to leave everybody with the newsroom opening scene. This is Jeff Daniels from the newsroom. Let me know in the comments, because I'll be watching the comments, if what he's saying still applies to America today. And again, I know this was just a television series, but just think about how relevant this is today.
Check, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always? Hey. And with a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign...